7.5, The Fan.
WIBC HD2, HD3, Indianapolis.
Thursday on the Wake Up Call with KB and Andy. More on the Pascal Siakam rumors from Toronto's side of it. Also, Chuck Pagano joins us to lead things off. Join us right here on The Fan on Thursday.
Here we go.
I should have stayed home and played with myself.
What do you like to do?
Oh, I don't know. Play chess, screw.
Well, let's play chess.
The Indianapolis Colts select Anthony Richardson. Quarterback, Florida.
Richardson going to take off and run. He's in there! Touchdown! I-N-D-Y! The first career touchdown!
Here's Halliburton into the front court. Mishandled it, but gets a shot. Hits it! Hits it!
John, I have never been better to be on the air with you here in Indianapolis, a place where so many of my dreams have come true.
The Ride with JMV on 93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
All right, everybody, let's go ahead and lock it in. We got a busy 3 hours for you because we already had a great deal of ground to cover regarding Purdue IU last night. The latest report involving Jim Irsay, Colts owner, that and a lot of other stuff on this show that obviously yesterday and today we knew we were going to talk about. We knew maybe this was coming, but it is now evidently, because Adrian Wojnarowski has reported it, etched in stone. The Pacers get the over 22 per game average of Pascal Siakam from the Toronto Raptors, for, I should say, among other things, Bruce Brown, Jordan Nwora, and count them up, 3 first-rounders. I think you had 2 in 24, 1 in 26. We will go over that in a second. I did want to remind you, I talked about this with Alex Golden yesterday of setting the pace. And my thought was this: no way, shape, or form would I have been willing to give up Benedict Mathurin. No way. And it was going to be kicking and screaming with Jazz Walker. So basically, no way I would have thought about doing that, and especially that of Mathurin. But let's face it. I mean, even if you're not of the believer like me, hey, let's win some games here. Let's have some fun and win some games. Yeah, be like Purdue. Be like Indiana State. No, not like everybody else is going to lose some games. Win some games here. Some meaningful games. You had prior, put yourself in a situation where you could maneuver around. And you had the good fortune / incredible knowledge to make the deal and bring in one of those types of players that spreads the wealth to a point to where it even has impact off the team. Talking about Tyrese Halliburton. That has impact off the team. I mentioned this yesterday to Alex Golden, too. Because the problem with Siakam was that he's got an expiring deal. And it had been mentioned a number of times that he wants to explore free agency. It had been mentioned a number of times he wasn't really happy the way the Raptors were dealing with him. He's disappointed. You wanted some, and I think I used this word yesterday, you wanted some reassurance that he was going to be around here longer than a couple of months. Granted, I want the Pacers to be a destination location. I know everybody wants to laugh. Hey, wait a minute. Indy's never going to be a destination. Well, listen, if you're a player and you want to go someplace and play, a guy like Tyrese Halliburton is absolutely perfect. As I talk about all the time, he not only scores it at a 25 points per clip, but he makes everybody around here better. That is what you want to build. We're not going to think about whether or not you have an ocean or mountains or a beach or anything like that. We want this to be a destination location for guys that want to come play basketball and win, and then have their games get better. So I saw Adrian Wojnarowski mention this. You know, he had the entire deal. he had it in place, and then he backed it up with a statement of which I'll paraphrase. It looks as if Siakam is very interested in going to the Pacers, wants to come here, wants to play, and is interested in going with an extension, which that was like the first time I had heard anything. And again, this is not etched in stone. He doesn't become a free agent officially if he wants to be until July. So there's nothing here that's etched in stone. But at the same time, you don't want a rental player here. That to me, them doing this deal, because it does make sense considering what they're giving up. To me, it does. And then even if you're going to roll the dice here, and you're going to hope that this doesn't turn out to be some sort of Mark Langston, Montreal Expos type of rental, it seemed like that maybe there was some reassurance there that the Pacers had to go ahead and execute this trade. And even though I'm not against Siakam, the player, I never have been, I'm sure as hell not against the Pacers getting better and winning more games, being more of a threat. I mean, hell, we've been sitting around how many years waiting on stuff like this? My major concern was making sure you get return on investment, and the Pacers have been getting return on investment. Let's just face it, too. Some of the bigger question marks with the Pacers over the years has been what they do with those draft picks. So now, with this, to me, you don't have to worry about whether this is going to be, Miles Plumlee or Goga or TJ Leaf. You're getting a player right now that can help you and raise the bar immediately. And to me, you're not really giving up any important pieces to do it. So with that in mind, you jump on that deal all day long. Actually, Monday through Saturday and Sunday, too. 7 days a week you jump on that. On the Andy Moore Automotive Group hotline from SI, Locked On Pacers and more. Nobody built better strategically to go through the ins and the outs of this reported deal today for Pascal Siakam between the Pacers and the Raptors than our friend Tony East. Where do you begin with this? With the nuts and the bolts that you have seen so far, is something that you feel that the Pacers absolutely would have to do? Because that's how I feel.
Yeah, eventually they're going to have to do something like this, right? They need the second talent next to Tyrese Halliburton, and they really need size, right? And the timing is funny because one of the teams that could properly expose the Pacers' signs, the Utah Jazz, just kicked their butt 2 days ago, right? 27-point win for Utah. Pacers' second biggest loss of the season. They've needed forward depth bad, and for a while on both ends, and now they have it. They've got a guy who can create his own shot regardless of if Halliburton's on the floor. They've got a guy who can finish plays, next to Halliburton and without him. They've got a mega talent, right? He's a two-time All-NBA player. And sure, there's some contract stuff to work through, but I think it's a trade the Pacers were going to have to make at some point. So to do it now and keep all of their young guys in-house, I think that is a pretty good deal for them.
Hey, it's Tony East on the Andy Moore Automotive Group hotline. Pascal Siakam traded from the Raptors to the Pacers. Now, when you look over the dynamics of this reported deal, do you also feel, as I do, that it looks like you give away relatively nothing in terms of what you can't make up with this team and get better with right now? That's how I felt. Do you feel the same way too?
Yeah, once we got what we knew last night, I thought that the 2024 first was going to be the thing that made this possible to be that, what you just described, because then they can still trade a bunch of their own first well into the future. They still have, like I said, all their young guys to make deals. Like, it's a reasonable price, and this is kind of just been building through this with their, they've always talked about flexibility. And in the moment when, your team doesn't make these giant improvements as a fan, it's kind of sometimes painful to just hear them talk about flexibility. Well, this is why, right? Because then eventually they can cash in some of that stuff and extra picks and cash and all that to get a really good player. And I think they did a good job biding their time and finding the right time to do that, and they pulled it off today.
He is Tony East of SI and more. Locked On Pacers, Channel 13 and more on the Andy Moore Automotive Group hotline, going over this Pascal Siakam trade. And I was one of those, and That was about a year ago when I just got sick and tired of hearing about draft capital and leverage and all this other crap. So, yes, I mean, the fact I got to give a shout out to draft capital because that is clearly what made this deal happen. In terms of what you're getting, I mean, we see Pascal Siakam as face value. They're over 22 a game. He's a guy, is one of those high-level NBA players, individually speaking. What do you believe the Pacers are getting, and how well will he fit in here with the guys?
Yeah, I was asked on Morning Show with Kevin and Andy a month and a half ago about, Anunoby and Siakam, which one's a better fit with the Pacers. And I said Siakam at the time because Anunoby's the better defender. But to me, and I've said this for forever, even before last free agency, Tyrese Halliburton is the whiz. He's amazing on offense. He's the reason the Pacers have the best offense in NBA history. But one, when he's off the floor, and two, when he's getting blitzed all the time, they have needed a second guy to really be the person who can, still break down defenses, put pressure on the rim, keep their style going with size. And Mathurin sometimes been able to do that, and Turner has sometimes been able to do that, but they've never had a consistent number two, a guy that makes teams have to scramble to guard multiple players. And I've always felt that was really important. And so I thought Siakam would be a great fit for exactly that. And, I think Caitlin Cooper said this well on tour yesterday. He's like paper thin when he has the ball. He can just fit between defenders out of nowhere and get into the paint, make defenses rotate, make nice passes. He started awful from three this year, but is over 40% since mid-November. He's a decent shooter. His true shooting percentage is really good. He is a hand-in-glove offensive fit for this Pacers team, especially next to Halliburton. He can play with pace. To me, it's a slam-dunk fit there. Defensively, he's fine. He is sized, and they don't have that. He's the best of their power forward defenders now, right? Neesmith a little too small all the time. So in that way, I think he's a great fit, and I think it's going to be a good one for the Pacers. And they have a lot of time to figure out how that can evolve. It's still 3 weeks till the trade deadline, so I think that's good stuff too.
He is Tony East, who joins us talking about the Pascal Siakam deal from the Raptors to the Pacers and the effects really for the Pacers now and even in the longer term a little bit as well. I kind of look at this among winning and because it all revolves around Tyrese Halliburton, I so want to think and believe that Indy can be a player destination location because of Halliburton. One of the worries we have is going to come up later on, maybe in July, in fact, when he officially is a free agent. Do you think that behind the scenes there had to be some reassurance of sorts that he was going to be cool with re-signing for this deal to completely get done, or do you think they were just thrilled in what they had, not only had to give here in what Toronto was going to take, but also still having, honestly, Tony, you look at it, they have some leverage, if you want to look at it that way, still prior to the trade deadline here. How do you look at this? There had to be some reassurance there, but also the fact that you leave yourself some flexibility prior to the trade deadline. It seems like an offer you just simply couldn't refuse, I guess, ultimately.
Yeah, I think that is kind of the case. I think the key part of this, I've kind of mentioned it a few times, is not having to give up Mathurin and Walker in particular. You don't get into the lottery very much. And the Pacers, this, feel like they didn't pick in the top 10 for 30 years, right? And so they picked in the top 10 twice. They want to hold on to that stuff. That could be their best assets or ticket to something more in the future. I think it's a big deal that they were able to hold on to that. I think it's sort of to be willing to their picks to do so. They still can trade future picks next year, but to hold on to their young guys, I think is, and they still have.
Hey, Tony, hold on one second. Stand still wherever you are because you're cutting in and out. I want to make sure that our listening audience hears what you have to say about that. So I'm going to have James, reset him really quick because you're cutting in and out. I want to make sure the knowledge that you're dropping right now, it is soaked up by the listening audience that is out there. And a shout out to everybody, too, including everybody now with the excitement of this deal being made inside the lounge via YouTube Live. Hopefully everybody is in there, and maybe some for the first time in the lounge at YouTube Live. All right, Tony East rejoins us right now. Go ahead and reset back where we were. I just wanted to make sure that everybody got and understood what you were talking about with this.
Yeah, they still have some ammo to even get better, right? Like you said, the trade deadline's coming up. Buddy Hield's contract is still expiring. They still have their 2 lottery picks, their most recent lottery picks, Jarris Walker and Ben Mathurin. And you know this, JMV, they don't pick in the top 10. They've only done it twice since the late 1980s, right? That is a huge deal for them to be able to hold on to those guys, the ones who could, in theory, be their best tickets now to being that third star, that third key player on their team. To keep those, I think, was a big deal, and I think it makes you extra motivated to, make the deals that they did. They're being able to willing to send out 3 firsts, which sounds like a big deal, but if they are willing to send out 3 firsts, as you're asking, to me that signals that they feel pretty good about keeping him, right? Adrian Wojnarowski tweeted, I can't remember how long it was ago. I have to scroll through my internet now, that Siakam is excited about the deal to the Pacers and expected to be eager to work out a new contract with the franchise this summer. Mark Spears said that Pascal is excited about being with the Pacers after talking to his agent, right? Like, that stuff all matters. And that would, of course, be a disaster, right? If they trade for him and he leaves, that's a big problem. That's a July problem. And the new CBA, the Pacers are able to negotiate first, right? After the finals end, the Pacers can talk to their own free agents. So they'll have a chance. They'll have some teams to worry about. But I don't think you do this without some reasonable confidence that you can keep Pascal Siakam, especially given the young guys they were able to keep at the same time.
Tony, were you surprised what they ultimately did give up in this deal to get him?
Not really. I mean, I think that, it was going to take something like this if there were no young players involved, right? You saw what the OG Anunoby trade was. Like, they were really excited about Emmanuel quickly because he's a proven, awesome young talent. And right after that trade, they looked fantastic, right? They got some great wins, and that's kind of fallen away a little bit. But, that's typically what teams like. So to be able to do it for firsts, I think, is important for the Pacers to hold on to their young guys. And Bruce Brown, team option next year. But the second that deal got signed, right, I think you and I talked about this, like, that contract looked extremely tradable for the Pacers with that team option next year. The Raptors could even flip him if they wanted this season. Jordan Nwora, he's on an expiring contract that was not extendable. He was going to be a free agent. So moving him makes some sense. Getting an extra second for taking on Kyra Lewis, which is like the smallest part of this that no one really will be interested in, is also good business by the Pacers, right? There's just a lot of stuff they did that I think is really interesting and good value for them, assuming they can keep him on a deal that isn't overpriced because he'll turn 30 in April, Siakam will. I think that this is the price they had to do because he's going to fit them perfectly, and they did a good job to keep their powder relatively dry going forward.
So any other, and Tony East joins us again, that's SI.com, it's THR, it's Locked On Pacers and more, making sure we're all firmly aware of everything going on with this Siakam to the Pacers deal from the Raptors. Anything that we haven't talked about yet that may be a little bit not so much in the center of the radar, but on the radar for the Pacers in terms of what this deal means for the roster right now?
Right this second, I mean, I think that, using their cap space in a deal is going to be interesting to see what they end up with from a cash perspective, because now they can't renegotiate and extend Buddy Hield. They can still extend him on a regular extension, but the renegotiation part is no longer probably possible. So that's going to be an interesting factor here as well. Future because he now fits even better with this team, right? Like, it's going to be even easier for him to get up open threes. He hasn't been making them this year, but that seems to be the next thing that really interests me, because every other expiring contract player besides Buddy Hield is either on a contract that could be back with the Pacers next year, or they'll be a restricted free agent in Obi Toppin's case. So that's the first thing I think about. And the second thing is their forward depth is now really fascinating to me with Siakam and Obi Toppin and Jalen Smith starting at the 4, which that won't be the case anymore, and Jarris Walker, right? How does that logjam get sorted out, especially because now that's bad news for maybe Isaiah Jackson or maybe Obi Toppin. So that is the next interesting thing to me, is where does that all go? Because they have a better team now, but they got to figure out their team going forward.
You think this team, like I mentioned, and I want it to be, you think it's going to evolve into a destination for players that want to win and up their game, playing alongside, playing around Tyrese Halliburton, which clearly we have seen his fingerprints all over this team when he's out there, how well they play, and then compare that to when he's not out there and how they look. Do you think this will become a basketball destination location of sorts here?
That's got to be the hope, right? Woj was reporting at the in-season tournament that Halliburton's recruiting and hopeful to keep guys. And it's not just about getting guys to sign with the Pacers. It's about getting guys to re-sign with the Pacers in Siakam's case, and that's just as valuable, right? If it makes you more confident you can make a trade like this, that has tangible value to your franchise. And I think if they believe that Siakam can re-sign and will fit well with Halliburton, they're already showing that they believe that can be the case for their team, right? So I think that's exceedingly meaningful, right? Like the Nuggets, for example, when they were ascending with Jokic before they actually won a title, they were never learning free agents, and all of a sudden they get Paul Millsap to come in, and they get a lot better. Then they get Aaron Gordon and KCP and all these guys. Like, if you just slowly get better as a basketball team, you can become an attractive destination for other players. And I think having Tyrese Haliburton and now having Pascal Siakam puts the Pacers closer to that path.
All right. If you were a betting person right now, would you bet that the Pacers are done, or because of what we talked about, that flexibility, might there be something else on the horizon prior to the trade deadline?
Just because of the logjam I think they're going to have at the front court, I don't think they're done, but I wouldn't say that I expect anything super significant now. But I've been wrong before. We'll see.
All right. Doesn't look like he'll play in Sacramento. They got a back-to-back, Sacramento and Portland Thursday and Friday, and then Phoenix to close out that road trip on Sunday. What do you think likely to see Pascal Siakam make his Pacers debut?
Yeah, perhaps in Phoenix could be an opportunity for that. But then they come home for 4 games, right, and 3 tough ones at that. So perhaps it's back-to-back, although that's pretty tough. I don't know where the Raptors are. I'd have to check right now. But I would presume that, Portland, Phoenix, or perhaps that Denver game when they come back home could be the answers.
All right, what are you writing for people out there that they can read regarding this? It's all been fluid this afternoon. Thanks, by the way, for jumping on here. But what do you got content-wise for folks?
Trying to get the detailed part done first, and then some analysis on what it means for the Pacers roster going forward. I'll have a podcast up later today as well. So it's all coming for you guys.
Well done. Well, I knew you were perfect to lead off on the show with, again, all the nuts and bolts of this thing, man. I appreciate you more than you know, Tony.
Look at the foresight from you booking me today, JMV. That's why they got you on here.
Appreciate you, brother. Later.
Of course, thank you.
It's Tony East right there, the Andy Moore Automotive Group hotline. I do want to get some thoughts from you guys, too. I'm going to work you guys in throughout the course of the afternoon per usual, because what is this organization and the game of basketball around here without the support of its fans? I have yet to see anybody not on board with it. One of these days down the road, I'm just going to prepare you for this. One of these days down the road, somebody is going to be drafted, and the research will be done and connecting the dots, and you're going to say, oh, man, had the Pacers not done this, this is who they could have drafted. All right, one of these days down the road. But who the hell cares about one of these days down the road? Let's get to winning around here. All right, let's get to winning. And then when you look at this deal, the 3 first-rounders, Nwora and Brown, I don't know if you could have asked for a better scenario. Again, I was no to Mather, and I was kicking and screaming with Walker. But with this you got to drive to Toronto and throw him in the car and bring him back on your own, don't you? For 22 points a game. What this team has been so far this year. And let's face it, too. They have been better defensively. Now, they're not locking you down like we're playing in the 1990s, but they have been better defensively. Other options on the floor. And Siakam is a major one. Got plenty of time to get to your calls coming up here. I do want to get your thoughts at 239-1070. Email address is jmv at 1075thefan.com if you want to work it in that direction. Inside the lounge via YouTube Live. Thank you all so much for joining us today. You guys, if you're new to it, that's what we do in there. We not just watch and listen, but we also participate inside the lounge via YouTube Live. The stream, the app, on the road tomorrow. I'll tell you about that because we're going to be playing NBA Jam at Twin Peaks on the road tomorrow and drinking beer. I don't even know, like that. For dudes is like Shangri-La, is it not? Is there anything? So think about it. We're going to Twin Peaks, and we're drinking beer, and you're playing NBA Jam. Seriously, that's what we're doing tomorrow. Tell you about that coming up, too. IU and Purdue, a shout-out to the Boilermakers for playing well. And the problem with IU is this. There's not a ton of talent. Certainly Purdue has more talent. But the problem that you have is, and especially in what you see the day after, when the fans clearly, and I mean clearly, care more than especially that team did to start the game against their biggest rival and one of the biggest rivalries of all time in their own building, then you've got some issues. You've got some issues with the players. You've got issues with the coaches. You've got issues with Mike Woodson, who plays this out like it's a big NBA season. One of the things when Mike Woodson got here was, he treats it too much like the NBA. And you saw that last night again. Should that be happening in year 3? But I'm telling you, the fans care more than the players do. Or at least that's how it looked at the beginning of the game, did it? That's how it looked in that first half. That's how it looked going to the locker room. And then obviously you sprinkle in decisions either made by Mike Woodson with the 2-foul NBA. The ultimate NBA rule, by the way, is the 2-foul rule. And getting buried by the number 2 team in the nation while your best players are sitting on the bench with 2 fouls and not recognizing that is an egregious error. He owned it after the game, but too late. To that coming up as well. Josh Schertz, the head coach of Indiana State Sycamores, red hot. He joins us a little bit later on. I don't know if Bowen is happy with this deal or not. Do you know? Want me to text him and see if he's happy? Give him a little tease? You know what I'm happy about? I don't have to talk ever again with the Pacers about entertaining losses and draft capital. All right, you built that flexibility in. Go out there and use it, and the time is now. Very happy about that. Kevin Bowen joins us. Jeff Rabjohns a little bit later on regarding last night's game. A great one for the Boilers and a struggle beyond belief for the Hoosiers that have certainly a lot more questions than they do answers. Also, the latest regarding that TMZ report on Colts owner Jim Irsay. That and more coming up at 239-1070. The stream, the app, HD Radio, 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
Watch parties aren't what they used to.
here, and the beat goes on.
93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
Got James all confused over there. Inside the Lounge via YouTube Live. Thank you very much for being a part of it. Hey, we're off of 82nd Street up in Castleton tomorrow at Twin Peaks. It's Twin Peaks, me, NBA Jam, and Mick Ultra coming up tomorrow. And I'll tell you what that's going to be all about in just a minute, too. Tony East a little bit earlier. Josh Schertz is the head coach of Indiana State. Still to come. Rabjohns is going to be in here. Kevin Bowen, the morning show with Swebo, was not altogether that thrilled about it. We'll see if he has had a change of heart coming up in the 5 o'clock hour. Don't go anywhere. And your reaction to Pascal Siakam and the trade from Toronto to the Pacers, among others. Jordan Nwora, Bruce Brown, 3 first-round selections, and we'll go over more of what went down with that deal on the Andy Moore Automotive Group hotline from the Star. He covers the Pacers. Dustin Dopirak joins us. Dustin, your thoughts today when all of this started to, I guess, in your case in Sacramento, land in your lap. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I mean, it's a huge deal, and obviously they were able to do it without getting rid of something massive. Obviously, the story going around was that they were not going to part with Benedict Mathurin, and they were not going to part with Jarris Walker. I still believe in both of those young guys. That's all picked each of their last 2 years. And they managed to do it. I mean, I think, there's certainly going to be concern that, if you don't re-sign him, that it can end up being a rental, but the guy that you moved is kind of your top-line player in this, and Bruce Brown, kind of could have been a rental anyway. I mean, they had him on a team option going into next year, and they might have declined that. So they managed to give up. Brown's been a really effective player, but I mean, when that's the top line guy and you're going to get a 2-time All-NBA wing, who also fits what you really need. I think it's a great move, and I think they obviously have a good chance of re-signing him. There's been certainly good indications so far out of Siakam's camp that he would be interested in doing that. Certainly, it's going to cost him a lot of money. Basically, I think they were going into this saying, hey, you got to go get a second all-star caliber player. You got to be willing to pay him, and you have to trust that if you put a guy like him alongside Tyrese Halliburton, that he's going to be so happy and enjoy it so much that he's going to want to stay. So they obviously, factored all of that in and just, went big, swung for the biggest guy they could swing for, and got him. So pretty significant win, I think, for the Pacers here.
Dustin Dopirak, he covers the Pacers on the road for the Indianapolis Star with us via the Andy Moore Automotive Group hotline and that deal. And you think that there's no doubt the Pacers feel fairly confident, maybe even more so than fairly confident, of getting a longer-term commitment either, coming up or this summer from Pascal Siakam, given the fact they ultimately did execute this deal?
Yeah, I do. I don't know if they got a guarantee. I think I know Mark Spears for Manscaped got a hold of his agent, and it was just kind of a little bit of a canned quote, but it said, that he likes the idea of his future there. I think whether they have a guarantee or not, I'm sure that they feel like they at least are going to get a fair hearing. The general theory of the case for the Pacers is I asked Halliburton really about recruiting at the in-season tournament. He said, trust what your eyes tell you. Look at what we're doing, see how much fun it is. Don't you want to come do this? And so their case is going to be when you get out and play this style, when you get to run as much as he's going to, when you play with a pass-first superstar who really does enjoy getting everybody involved the way Tyrese Halliburton does, man, you're going to get the ball and you're going to get an opportunity to score. And, aren't you going to want to do this? Doesn't this seem fun to you that you're instantly going to be on a fun team that's going to be competitive? And so basically their belief is, I think more than anything else, they wanted to know they were going to get a hearing at least, that they were going to get a real opportunity. I don't know if they needed a guarantee, but I think they believe in what they're doing enough that it's going to be attractive enough for somebody like Siakam to want to stick around and, be in a situation where, the Pacers, if they have both of those guys, the Pacers can be at least a contender, at least in with the Bucks and Celtics, the 76ers going forward. They can be in that realm, and they'll have a shot, and Siakam could be on another team that's capable of winning the East.
What's Siakam do for this offense, you think, right away, whenever it is he plays? It doesn't look like it's going to be tomorrow night in Sacramento. Probably won't be then in that back-to-back in Portland. Maybe Maybe Phoenix on Sunday, maybe early next week on a Tuesday against Denver at Gainbridge Fieldhouse. But whenever that is, what offensively, we've seen the numbers, what offensively does he bring to this team? Because they're already a really accomplished offensive group that's going to add a major weapon.
Right. I mean, obviously, they don't have a guy who's been operating as their number 2 second option. I mean, I think what's wild is since Halliburton's been out, they had 3 games. You know, Utah on Monday night was a wreck. But prior to that game, you know, when Brown and Nesmith were out, they had 3 straight games where they had 7 guys scoring double figures, but nobody got 20. And so there's good and bad to that. But Siakam is a guy that's going to be able to get you 20 and 30 whenever you need it. I mean, on nights when everyone's trying to take Halliburton out, Siakam can be the guy, and he's also not selfish. I mean, he averaged 5.8 assists last year for a guy that's 6'8", 230. That's a pretty huge number, and he's just 4.9 assists. So he can be a selfless player. He can fit into this style where they like to move the ball and like to get everybody involved. But he can obviously score himself. He can go get his buckets. You know, he's got enough perimeter skill at 6'8", 230 to create his own shot. A not great, but a good enough 3-point shooter, but can get his buckets. He's the guy that can get you 20, 25, 30 whenever you ask for it. And they do need somebody like that. As much as the all for one for all thing is great, you do need to have somebody that can take over when some team decides, you know, I'm just not letting Tyrese Halliburton beat me today. You know, they need a guy who's been able to do that. They haven't had that. Mathurin's had a couple games like that, but hasn't necessarily been consistent at it. Siakam is a guy that you know is going to be able to do that every night if you need it.
So Dustin Dopirak covers the Pacers for the Star. When do you think he makes his Pacers debut?
I mean, I think Sunday's a good bet. You know, obviously, got to find out just if there's anything specific that might be an issue there. You know, no one's been able to talk about that yet. I'm sure it's not final enough for anybody to be able to go on record and talk about it yet. So obviously there could be some things we find out that's different. But I think it's a fair bet that a back-to-back is kind of tough. But, you know, certainly, you know, they got some time. Obviously today's not an off day. I'm heading over to practice right now. But they don't have they don't have a game tonight. You know, maybe there's a chance to get him in by tomorrow. Maybe they could just meet up in Portland on Friday night. But I think Sunday is probably safe. That'd be, I think, a safe bet. Obviously, worst case scenario would be Tuesday when they get back to Indianapolis.
All right, I know you got to run here because they have a practice, but what are we looking at health-wise? Because that's been in question, and especially that of Benedict Mathurin. What's your expectation, guys, that can participate in Sacramento coming up tomorrow night?
Yeah, good question. I mean, obviously, you know, Mathurin was able to play a little bit on that ankle and ended up getting taken out. So, I mean, I don't know if it's a situation where they might have pushed him if that game was close. But we'll certainly find out when we get over there. I mean, he was walking around the locker room, you know, as I was leaving. I don't think it didn't seem to be – it's not like he wasn't on crutches coming out of there. So that obviously doesn't mean that he'll be playing. He might take another day to rest it or anything like that. I don't think it's anything long-term. You know, Nesmith, certainly I think they would be hoping that after 4 days that would resolve itself. They were hoping that it was a thing that they just needed to give a little time and he could get back. Obviously, the other guy was hurt was Brown, so he obviously moves on. So I would think they'd be hopeful they'd be close to 100% with their remaining guys going in tomorrow night.
So Dustin Dopirak of the Star covers the Pacers. He's in Sacramento getting ready to practice right now. Pascal Siakam for the Raptors to the Pacers, and he helped break that down for us on the Andy Moore Automotive Group hotline. Man, I know it's short notice. Thanks for hopping on here, and we'll track you down again, I'm sure. See how this thing really does go down once it officially begins. Thanks, man.
Sounds good. Thanks for having me.
Dustin Dopirak joins us. All right. I'm not going to make light of this. At least I'm consistent. Because I get this. I can't believe they did this. You know, he's 30 years old or approaching 30. And I've heard the timeline argument. And while, okay, listen to those arguments. To me, you can't sit around and whine and cry about the Colts and Chris Ballard never jumping in and really, truly going for it and then go, I don't know about the Pacers. That's the part I don't understand. I like the fact that Kevin Pritchard and Chad Buchanan, they're jumping in and doing something about it. They are actually trying to win right now. And we're going to go into the Colts offseason wondering what they're going to do, twiddling their thumbs. Are they going to get another wide receiver? Are they going to spend their cap space? Blah, blah, blah. So, hey, listen, I apologize if you don't truly understand my enthusiasm with it, but to me, they didn't give up very much. To me, they're getting a lot in return. And if you got any thought whatsoever that this guy is going to come back, why not do it? Why not do it? Does anybody else feel that way? Do you feel counter to that? We sit around all day wishing teams around here weren't so conservative. And then the moment they aren't, and they do so, oh, I don't know about that. I don't know if we can do that. Everybody starts sounding like somebody's dad. I don't know if you should do that or not. So, again, excuse my enthusiasm if I finally am around somebody that's going to, jump in and do something. I'm excited about that. And then, you know what? And it doesn't work out, then I'll go ahead and come back and say, well, that didn't work out, and clearly my enthusiasm was misplaced. But I don't know about anybody else. I don't know if I've got, speaking of timelines, my timeline is, can you guys win anything around here, close to where I am now? Can anybody be good? That's my timeline. Where everybody else says, well, it's okay where you missed the postseason. That's okay. You lose to Houston. Everything's going to be okay because you are assured of future. You're not assured of anything. But you're certainly not going to get anything if you sit on your hands, and I hear about that all the time. And then when a team actually does it, I'm met with skepticism. Somebody explain that to me. Quick break, we'll come back. 239-1070. Josh Schertz, head coach of Indiana State. There's another winning team around here we'll talk about. We'll talk with the head coach coming up at the top of the hour, Kevin Bowen of the morning show, Jeff Rabjohns about the Hoosier debacle last night, and just a great performance all the way around by the Boilermakers. That and the latest from TMZ regarding the Jim Irsay story that they published via social media platforms earlier this morning. We'll get to that and a lot more. Don't go anywhere. 93.5, 107.5, The Fan.
Bush loaded.
Stupid is no way to go through life, son.
93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
Pascal Siakam, according to ESPN, traded from the Raptors to the Pacers. Bruce Brown, Jordan Nwora, 3 future first-rounders. Dustin Dopirak of the Star, Tony East of SI, both with breakdowns and thoughts. And again, maybe in Phoenix on Sunday for his debut, maybe coming up on Friday. They got a back-to-back tomorrow night in Sacramento and then Friday in Portland to the Pacers. They are entering practice right now, by the way, too. But good info from both a little bit earlier. Now I'm going to turn to you and ask your thoughts. You know mine. Listen, I know occasionally I have been known to whiz in your Wheaties about stuff or, be the figure of doom and gloom. And I very easily could be here, right? I could go, oh, man, well, if he doesn't stay, then, we're all screwed. This, to me, is what I talked about with Alex Golden yesterday of setting the pace. This is a deal that you could not sidestep. You could not bypass. And I love it that a team around here is going for it now because I get sick and tired of hearing about what's going to happen in 2029. That's the part I love the most. And then I question why there is some pushback for a team that actually is trying to build on something and win right now, but still has a vision on the future. And I know a lot of you would dig if the football team would do it here, right? Or I guess until they did it, and then everybody would go find 19 different reasons why you think the deal sucked. Couple of thoughts right there. 239-1070 is that number. Email address is jmv at 1075thefan.com. Again, Pascal Siakam from the Raptors to the Pacers. Jordan Nwora, Bruce Brown, and 3 first-rounders. Anthony starts this off at 239-1070 with a reaction. Hello, Anthony.
John, how are you, my friend?
Outstanding.
So it's nice to lead off on ESPN, right? The Pacers are being talked about. Mike Wilbon loves the trade. You love the trade. So maybe I should rethink my stance.
You better.
Those are 2 opinions that I respect the hell out of.
Thank you, brother.
Hear me out a little bit. Bowen this morning, he was kind of talking about the timeline thing that you mentioned, and I don't think that Nwora and Brown and the picks are what we should be worried about. It's the max contract. We know this ownership group's not going to go into the luxury tax. Siakam's on, the back end of it. He's already missing 10 to 15 games a year. As he gets older, is that going to be 15 to 25? I mean, I'm kind of repeating what Kevin said this morning, but he's right. And the fact that Halliburton's playing with Team USA, and he's going to get that exposure, and he's going to play with some of these superstars. I guess my main concern is that the Pacers just, they jumped at the first thing under their nose, and they're going to max him out. And does that really hamstring all flexibility in the future with such a young core?
Can I tell you something, Anthony, with that? And that's okay if that's your thought process, but I would like to consider, because maybe not with draft selections in the teens, but with trades, this group here, with Kevin and with Chad, with Buchanan and Pritchard, they've been pretty good about this. So
they've been great. They've been outstanding.
I'm assuming that they didn't go into this making this deal not having some understanding regarding the repercussions further down the road. And I will also tell you this, the fact that they still remain with flexibility. That is not, like, I would be pissed if I learned that deal was on the table and they turned that down. Seriously, I would be mad about that. I just have to think that those that are guiding this team have a bit of an understanding, certainly more than we do right now, and that is something that they believe will be taken care of, just like we're talking about an extension, right? Somebody that's going to fit in, and we're not talking about an NFL running back here at the age of 30. It's not like all of a sudden he's going to fall off a cliff, never to be heard from again.
Yeah, I guess I just go back to, even on every bad team in the NBA, somebody's got to get 20 or 25 or whatever. But I hope he comes in and kills it. I love when the Pacers are great. It's great for the city. It's great for the town. Speaking of that quickly, 2 quick real things before I hop off here. One, is there anyone locally of any kind of ilk that you can say you've heard any kind of rebuttal to what TMZ is reporting about Mr. Irsay?
No,
I don't want to get into
rebuttal.
it too much, but
no, they don't often. I will tell you
saying?
this: and what you got again today was just backing up his condition right now, and we hope that he is doing better and is okay. But I can't imagine that they reported. And this is all. I will tell you this, and I do have to run here, and I'm going to get to this a little bit later on. This is stuff that had been floating around, and then clearly TMZ got the records with or from, in some form or fashion, the Carmel PD. So if you're asking me, Anthony, if you're asking me if I believe that it's true, I do believe that it's true. Listen, I hope that it isn't, because you know how much I like him. You know how much I respect him. Because if it is true, I mean, we're talking about serious circumstances here. I mean, serious circumstances, health-wise, moving forward, all of that. Get back to that coming up in just a minute. All right, quick break. We'll come back. What we got? Top of the hour. Josh Schertz, head coach of Indiana State, is going to join us. Your calls. And again, Pascal Siakam to the Pacers from the Raptors. Jordan Nwora, Bruce Brown, 3 first-round picks. Your thoughts on that and more inside the lounge via YouTube Live as well. 93.5, 107.5 The Fan.
In order for small businesses to...
Indianapolis.
The Ride with JMV. 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
Oh, there's a lot going on here. Pascal Siakam from the Raptors to the Pacers, according to ESPN. Siakam on the season, over 22, over almost 6.5 rebounds per as well. Could slide right in and is necessary. We'll go ahead and raise the expectation level of this group, too, and get your thoughts. I'm sorry, I am just a little bit surprised. I know Anthony. Anthony's a good dude. I'm a little bit surprised that some turned their nose up at this. Given what they had to part with and what you're getting in the moment in return. And then I guess maybe it's just my understanding that those in a much, much higher pay grade, team president, general manager, they have already looked further down the road to make sure that there's no screwing that's going to happen. And I guess we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. But I would sit here right now if I were to have heard, hey, this is what the Pacers didn't want to part with. And this is what they could have received. And mind you, there are pitfalls in everything. There could be anything that can happen. Look, you know where we are. I mean, normally around here, you can't really have anything professionally good for longer than 5 minutes before it spoils, before something happens. You know that rut we're in. It's a canyon of a rut. But that is not going to persuade me from not looking at this group and going at it in the fashion in which they are right now. And by the way, still leaving themselves some leverage to do something else if they want to prior to the trade deadline. I'm not going to look at that as a negative. I mean, I may be negative at times, but it's sure as hell not at this time. Because I am ready for some professional winning. Ready for it. Get back to IU and Purdue from last night in a second, too. And Anthony had asked regarding the TMZ report with Jim Irsay. A little bit more on that from me coming up, too, so don't go anywhere. Inside the Lounge via YouTube Live is where we are. Twin Peaks tomorrow, NBA Jam, and Mick Ultra. I don't know, four things right there, including me, I guess, which makes it a can't-miss visit, can't-miss destination for you tomorrow. I'll tell you what you can do and play some NBA Jam with me coming up tomorrow. Meantime, on the Andy Moore Automotive Group hotline, speaking of winning, the head coach of my Indiana State Sycamores, another one last night over Missouri State over in Paradise. It's awesome to watch the Sycamores play. Josh Schertz is their head coach. He joins us now. Hello, Coach. How are you?
Hey, JMV. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it. I love how you say my Sycamores because we definitely are that.
They are my Sycamores. There's no doubt about that. And winning at a high-level clip. Before I get into this and the state of your team right now, did you go up and talk to the student that hit that full-court putt last night for $10,000?
That might be, out of all the things I've ever seen done, that might be, from a degree of difficulty to win $10,000, like the hardest thing I've ever seen. And that's got to be harder than a full-court shot. I mean, he putted from one of the court to the other.
Yeah.
On wood, and it's not even like it's even. It's got its dead spots, and it's not even slanted a little bit. You know, I mean, I don't know what you could probably let me do that seriously a million times, and I wouldn't even come close. And the crazy part was the holes on the right and left, which were just an inch or two off, were worth $100 had it gone through those. He hit it through the dead center for $10,000. I mean, it was amazing.
It didn't touch either side either. It was center squared up. And you're right. Can you imagine what the floor would have been like had they used to back when I was at Indiana State? They would let like PE classes get out there on it and run around in their cowboy boots. Can you imagine what that would have been like then? But
it would have made it too much. It would have got stuck midway through the roll. It would have just like got stuck in some gook, and it would have just stopped about mid-court. But I was in the timeout. And obviously, I don't know what's going on. They have these, promotions, and all of a sudden I hear the crowd kind of, and then just exploded. Like, I mean, that was maybe as loud as I've heard Holman, and that was well deserved. That was remarkable, a remarkable deal. That could have been $10,000 to me. I think they got off cheap with that.
Yeah, but can you imagine? I'm thinking about myself in 1992 or 93. In Terre Haute, having just won $10,000.
Yeah, it's incredible. Like I've somebody told me it's been viral. It's been like on ESPN, CBS, and I mean it's I don't know. I hope he's who knows what he's going to do. He's $10,000 can take you a long way as a college student in Terre Haute. I can tell you that.
Oh my. We had major parties at 8th and Crawford anyway, Josh. I can't imagine with $10,000 in my pocket the type of party we would have had at 8th and Crawford.
I'll say this: his social calendar, I believe, just got a heck of a lot busier here with people wanting to be his friend. So I want to hang out with him. Is what I'm going to try to do. Is just want to be. I don't necessarily need the money. I just want to be his sidekick.
I believe his name, the student's name is Cam Harden, that won the $10,000 on that inline to inline full court putt last night. That was during Indiana State's win. They're now 6-1 in the Mo Valley, 15-3 overall. That win last night over Missouri State. Josh Schertz, their head coach on the Andy Moore Automotive Group hotline. What do you like about what you see from your group right now as we're really getting into the teeth of Missouri Valley Conference season?
I like, for coaches, I think, you always, the talent or whatever, that's obviously the most important thing. But, I think this group has kind of an uncommon maturity about it. It's got great emotional stability, which I know doesn't sound real sexy when you're talking about like stuff you like, but I think it's really important to winning. I was curious to see how we'd handle. We went down to Drake. We led by 7 second half. Really, Drake was terrific, and we were really probably played our worst 10 minutes of the season. Got outscored 36-14 from the 15-minute mark to the 5-minute mark of the second half. Lost the game by 11. I want to see how we'd respond, and I thought we would. But it goes back to these guys, the way they, the kind of teammates they are, the way they support each other, the way they enjoy each other's success, how connected, how together they are, the way they handle winning and losing, the way they prepare. I like all that stuff. And I think all that stuff is what allows you to go from being a really good team to a championship team. I think that's the separators, because it's not talent at this level, and it's really not coaching. It's those kind of, intangible things that you really don't know till you go through them.
Yeah, Josh Schertz, the head coach of Indiana State, joins us. It's like a puzzle. We talked about this last time that you put together, and really you don't know what it looks like until the pieces start to be fit in the right place. I guess I would ask you, there seems a relative consistency with this group from start to where you are right now. That has to kind of surprise you a little bit, because it's almost like a reboot every single year, collegiately speaking, right now. And there is a great deal of unknown when you start a season. Are you a little surprised that they look to be well ahead of schedule at this point?
Yeah, I think you have hopes, of course. Every coach, you talk to them in in May and June, right before they get there, and you got the second coming of the like the '96 Bulls or the 2015 Warriors, because you feel great about everybody. But the reality is, like for us, we lost, I think, 83% of our scoring off last year's team. Most of it to graduation. Our 3 leading scorers were seniors. We had 6 seniors on the team, and 5 of them were in our top 8. So we knew we only had 5 players returning, and we had 8 new scholarship guys. And I thought Isaiah Swope would be a great fit for us. I thought Ryan Kahn would be a great fit for us. But you recruit these guys, and you hope that the hard part with the portal is that where you make more mistakes, I think, is not so much in the talent. I don't think that's as hard to gauge. I mean, I'm sure that happens sometimes, but it's really the cultural fits, the character fits, because, as trite or cliche as that sounds, like, the runway in that recruitment is so much shorter than the runway with a high school kid. And so you really have to, guess right, I guess would be the right way to put it, or do as much due diligence as you can to make sure you don't miss there, because where I do think we've been good, and Jake Wolf, we brought him in, and his role hasn't probably been what we expected or he expected. Aaron Gray, who was 2-time transfer, was cleared, and the same scenario for him. I would say both those guys, while they haven't maybe been on the court yet quite what we had expected coming in, I would say they've been exactly who we thought they were in the locker room. And what I mean by that is they haven't let their frustrations with their playing time affect their emotional investment in the team. They've been great teammates. They've been supportive. They've enjoyed their teammates' success. And if any frustrations hasn't affected their work ethic and the way they operate, and that's where you can make mistakes. And I think we've, at least the last 2 years, been really fortunate to hit that right in the transfer portal. Not just, hey, these guys fit our system, we think they're going to be impactful. But, yeah, they also fit us culturally and what we're about, in terms of how we operate on a day-to-day basis.
It's Josh Schertz, the head coach of Indiana State, with us on the Andy Moore Automotive Group hotline. Again, 6-1 in the Missouri Valley, 15-3 overall. Maybe you get a little bit of a head start. You mentioned Isaiah Swope. You mentioned Ryan Conwell. How much helped you? Because obviously them being from the state of Indiana, and certainly you saw up close and personal Isaiah and what he did for Southern Indiana a year ago. How much did that help you out, knowing how good that fit might be for your group?
Well, I think both those guys, it was huge. Isaiah, I saw him, like you said, he dropped a 28. That kid refuses to score more than 28. He always wants his career high to be against Indiana State. I swear, I think he gets to 27, 26, 25, and then he just shuts down. He just never wants to beat that career high. But, I watched him play. And then, when he was going into the portal, we had a couple of connections there with Sam Mervis, Nick Hittle, who played here at Indiana State. And my first year from Coach Lansing's group, they went to Southern Indiana. So they were teammates with him. And then his trainer, the guy who kind of brought him up, was really connected with Matthew Graves. So once he went in, we knew he was going to the portal. We obviously waited till he went in. But we had a great feel for who he was as a kid, his work ethic, all those things. And then we had the connections. But I thought he would be a fantastic fit. And Ryan Conwell, the year before, was when we had our recruiting board in 2022, when I got here, my first year was 21, so our class of 22. It was Robbie Avila and Ryan Conwell were 1 and 1A. And Ryan, we were his first Division I offer. I remember it. We brought him to campus. I saw him in June. We got him to campus the next week. We offered. He was, they were blown away, so happy because he wasn't really a prominent recruit. And then how recruiting works is a month later, I couldn't get a hold of him. So he was, he blew up way beyond us, and we couldn't even get in the mix, and we weren't even in the Final Five when he chose. But we did everything we could. We were there. His first day of practice, the whole staff went. We did the home visit. They've been to campus. So when he went in the portal, I think there was a little bit of built-in of, man, like, look. And I told him this when I talked to him. I said, your whole thing is you're not going to find a head coach that believes in you more than me. Because he averaged 5 points a game in South Florida on a team that, was well below 500, that was well below us in the net. But I said, I really think you're a star. And I said, you're not going to find a head coach, that believes in you and what you can be more than me. And I showed that last year, and I'm showing that now. And I think being close to home, too, we had it last year with Kabasier McCauley, but to have it with Isaiah Ryan, where our two leading scorers are Indiana kids, I think that's a big deal as well.
It is. Josh Schertz, the head coach of Indiana State. Murray State on the road in Murray, Kentucky, coming up, I believe, on Sunday, right, at 5 o'clock. Right. That's on ESPN, too. So everybody out there, I've got to make sure that they're watching that coming up on Sunday because that is a tough-as-hell place to play when it was in the OVC and certainly what it is right now in the Missouri Valley. And Josh on the Andy Moore Automotive Group hotline. Before we get to that matchup, I did want to ask you this. Do you, in your mind, at all allow yourself to think about there being a path to an at-large in a season in college basketball that we have seen so far, or is it 100% focus on winning as much as you can and then making sure you take care of business in St. Louis?
Probably both, right, is the honest answer, I guess. I think one goes with the other. I don't at all think about where we are in the at-large discussion right now because, it's January 17th. And, there's so much basketball to be played, and the margin for error at this level is so small that, anything that distracts you from preparing, like, the best way to do anything is to win, and if we take care of our business and we're able to focus and continue to improve and win the games in front of us, which are, as you know, in this league are really daunting. Even the games that people would write off and say, hey, that's not really that, they're challenging. And so, anything that distracts you from that is bad. But certainly, you're not in a silo either. Like you understand, hey, we're 26 in the net today, right? And that's a very fluid ranking. It vacillates, day to day based on results that, really don't have much to do with you and your own results. So certainly, I guess the answer is both. But the key is to stay locked in on, I always look at a season. I really think the best way to do it is 3 modes. We talk about this to our guys. Like last night, we're competing, and we go out and compete against a good Missouri State team. We come back. We're off today. Tomorrow we go back. We'll watch that film and we'll flush that, and that's our learning process. We will watch the good, the bad, why we won, where we can get better, things that happened, and then we'll flush that game, and then we'll dive right into preparation mode for Murray State. And we try to just toggle between those 3 modes. We're competing, we're learning from the competition, we're preparing, we're not getting, too high, too low, and anything that's distracting, all the outside noise, that's great. But a competitor's mindset, you got to kind of block all that out and focus on what's in front of you because it's as we've seen in college basketball, it's very easy to stub your toe, and games aren't won on paper. They're won in between those four lines on the wood, and you got to be locked in. But certainly we understand where we are in the net, and in a perfect world, that would take a lot of pressure off in St. Louis if we knew, hey, we earned ourselves an at-large bid. Also means we won a heck of a lot of games between now and March 7th.
Yeah, what's fun for me to watch, too, and this includes Michigan State in a loss, and I loved what you said after that game when you said, hey, we came up here to win. We're incredibly disappointed. But I mean, you could tell that Tom Izzo and Michigan State, they were loaded up, and they knew what you guys were bringing to the table, and I felt the same way when you guys played against Drake. Obviously, and that I think Tucker DeVries is like my age. I think he's been there about as long as I was at Indiana State, and he was tough to handle. But to your point, you look at the Mo Valley with you guys, Drake, Southern Illinois, Bradley, Belmont, Murray State. I mean, it's 4-2, 4-2, 4-2, 5-1, and 6-1, and you're right. There is not much margin for error right there. There's not, and. You've got, I think we've got 4 teams in the top 100 in the net, we've had 3 losses. We've had, 3 quad 1 road losses when you look at Drake, Michigan State, Alabama. And we've had 1 quad 1 road win, which now Bradley's a quad at the moment. Again, those things fluctuate, but as of today, a quad 1 road win. But we're going to have plenty of good opportunities here with this league. I mean, we still got, Bradley coming back here. We got Drake coming back here. We got to go to Belmont. There's going to be plenty of opportunities to gain quality wins. But the flip side of that is there's plenty of opportunities to stub your toe. Yeah. And my 2 years in this league, what's been hard is, the winners, the champions have had 4 or 5 losses. And in mid-May, this league kind of cannibalized itself in some ways where it's really hard to separate yourself clearly from everybody else. And like you said, I mean, Missouri State yesterday, you look at them, they're 2-5 in the league, but that's a quality basketball team. And they've got a lot of Power 5 transfers, and they're a talented, athletic, big team. And, we got to go back there. That part is where you really got to be careful. But this league will give us opportunities. We'll have some quality opportunities, but we got to take advantage of them, just like, the Michigan State game. I went in the locker room after that game, and, that's one of those things where you're kind of like, I wonder what it's going to be like. They're going to be okay, moral victory. We were, up 5 in the second half and had a chance there in the final 4 minutes. And I went in and guys were pissed. And you know what? I was thrilled that they were pissed because that shows the mentality is where it needs to be in terms of, man, we didn't come to play close or to put in a good show. We came here to win, and we came up short, and guys were upset. And that's part of what you want from your guys. You don't want them to be happy that they lost. They should expect to win every single game, and our guys do. Josh Schertz, the head coach of Indiana State, joins us again on the road in Murray State. 5 o'clock coming up on Sunday, almost Sunday evening, Sunday late afternoon, ESPN2. You can check that out. I'm going to fair a guess. Jason Kent and Julian Larry, they seem like quality dudes that you can count on in most anything, even beyond basketball. That has to give you a great feeling of being able to rely and lean on those guys in those basketball moments. They really do. They're elite students, elite human beings. They're 2 guys who, as you know, I mean, look, fans, particularly casual fans, when they look at somebody's value, they look at one number, and that's the number in the far right of the box score, right? Yep, like that's exactly the number that everybody fixates on. And so, but, I tell my guys all the time, like, there are a lot of great players who are not great winners. There are some great winners who are not great players. But the best players are both. And the thing I'll say about Julian Larry and Jason Kent is they are some of the best winners I've ever coached in my 26 years coaching. Like, their fingerprints are all over the game in so many different ways. And some of them we call them like invisible plays, because they're not credit for them, but they're incredibly valuable to winning. I mean, Julian Larry last night, guards one of the more dynamic guards in our league, and Alston Mason, and that kid goes 5 for 17, and Julian Larry might have defeated, and I'm not even exaggerating, maybe 55, 60 ball screens. And I mean, he's just throwing his body in there, getting over them, pushing himself to the 3-point line, contesting, getting his body back. I mean, those are multiple effort. I mean, and so those kind of invisible plays, like, those guys are elite winners, and your teams have to have that. And so while the guys who score the most points tend to get the most notoriety, I would put
Jason Kent, Julian Larry up against anybody in college basketball in terms of guys who impact winning, and they could care less if they get 2 points or 4 points, or they care about the team winning, and if they're going to put their fingerprints on that in as many ways as possible on both ends of the floor.
Yeah, I think about teams that always talk about decision-making on the floor and what you can trust. And, like, with the ball, Julian Larry, he just makes you feel comfortable. And it's not like that is something easy to find. So
no, it punches. I mean, he creates a lot of pace for us. He's the fastest guy in the league with the ball. He's constantly pushing in transition, probing. He doesn't really turn the ball over. He's just uber efficient. And just like Jason Kent knows what he does. Julian Larry knows what he does. And those guys are stars in their roles. And that's what, you mentioned puzzle earlier. We've talked about that. I mean, the pieces amplify each other, or do they get in each other's way? Those guys amplify what Robbie, Ryan, and Isaiah do, which is what makes the whole thing work, is that the pieces fit together and they actually calm each other. And even though we have really talented guys, as you know, the key to a team is the sum greater than the individual parts. And because of guys like that, our sum is greater than the individual parts.
So you got a friend of the show here that just texted me and said that you sound a lot like Rick Carlisle.
Well, we got the same barber, so hopefully we, not the same paycheck, but at least same barber, and yeah. Hey, listen, I don't know. Rick Carlisle's way smarter than me. He's won a lot more games.
Well, speaking of barbers, maybe unnecessary. Tell Graves I said hello too.
He also does not need a barber. He goes to the same one. So yeah, I will make sure to tell Matthew you said hello. He's back in Indy today, enjoying the day off, and we'll get him back up here tomorrow. But he's back home in Indy, hanging out with the family. They'll kick him out tomorrow, though. They don't want to be around him. They have a one-day max for him, so he'll be there today, and he'll be on the road first thing tomorrow morning.
I know. Everybody kind of gets tired of the old White River Valley stories of the 1990s. So, yeah.
And nobody more than his family is. I mean, Lily, Abby, Susan. I mean, nobody more than them is sick of hearing about that stuff. So he'll be on the road first thing 7 a.m. tomorrow. I'm sure Susan will make sure of that.
When you and Dusty May are around, if you're ever around Indy, let me know so I can meet up with you guys too, because I want to be a part of that conversation. Okay?
We'll absolutely do that. We'll do that. He'll be he was back here for Christmas, but he'll be coming back up this way, and I'd love to get together with you guys for sure.
Hey, keep on keeping on. It's a joy to watch. Really appreciate you coming on. We'll do it again soon.
That sounds great. Thanks so much for having me on, and we'll talk to you soon. Take care.
It's Josh Schertz, the head coach of my Sycamores right there. They are an absolute joy to watch. I mean, fun as hell to watch. Yeah, I would agree. A lot of you are saying, how long do you think he's going to be there? Let's not do this. It's kind of like with the Pascal Siakam story. Like, everybody wants to think about, well, what's going to happen in July? Or what's going to happen if he gets injured? See, we're all conditioned to believe that because there has been so much going haywire. That's not going to keep me from embracing what I feel to be an absolute can't-miss deal. Pascal Siakam from the Raptors to the Pacers, Jordan Nwora, Bruce Brown, 3 first-rounders. Those of you out there that get a sports arousal regarding draft capital, then this is not going to be your day on this show. But if you like a team going after it right now, you like a team that wants to win right now, also you can have eyeballs to the future but win right now. If you are like me and that team and those decision makers, let's all jump on this bad boy and have some fun. Let's have some fun with it. Let's not try to think about what's going to go haywire. We're conditioned to believe that. Let's stop it. And then, hey, let's do this. Let's connect some dots on it, and maybe, just maybe, you get the same type. I know you're going to say, well, the Colts did win this, but you know how it ended. Let's go big at times, too, from a Colts standpoint. Nothing wrong with it. We have endured a great deal of losing around here, you especially. Let's embrace that. See what you think on the other side regarding that deal. Again, if you're on hold, I'll get to you. Plenty of time. Kevin Bowen, top of the hour. Jeff Rabjohns regarding the debacle last night for the Hoosiers in Assembly Hall. And a shout-out to Matt Painter and the Boilermakers that went off not once but twice. Got up 20 to end the half and then up 20 again after losing the lead. And a lot of questions surrounding this Hoosier basketball program. Pascal Siakam, that's what we're talking about in that deal. Pacer fans, your thoughts with me next.
Hardy.
The Fan. The Ride with JMV.
Son, you got a panty on your head. You drive fast, eh?
93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
All right, so are many of you really that worried? Again, you're conditioned. I've been around. I've knocked on enough wood here so far today that everybody should feel secure, right? But you're conditioned to believe that because normally around here something goes haywire. The execution of what the Pacers are doing today should make you feel good. You argue that the Colts don't do enough in similar fashion. Why would you not, especially with this deal? Believe me, for Pascal Siakam, I didn't want Benedict Mathurin leaving. No way. And again, as I mentioned, kicking and screaming of Jarris Walker. But Bruce Brown, Jordan Nwora, and three first rounders that, who knows? What, 2 24s and a 26? It is okay to have your team live in the moment while also keeping an eye on the future. It's okay if they go for it. It should be allowed. Here's the thing that bums me out, because I hear it all the time. You got to go for it. You're too conservative. And then when a team goes for it, y'all piss and moan about it. Believe me, I want this thing to work. I want this thing to work, and it adds a great deal of juice for me. And as I mentioned a little bit earlier, if you were going to write on a piece of paper and hand me the conditions of this deal, I would have been incredibly upset had the Pacers not done it. This is one that you have to, right? You know, even if you're approaching 30, even if you're not on the right timeline, even if this is a guy that doesn't add a great deal of defense. I mean, all these even ifs. Don't you, considering those circumstances, have to do that right now? Would you not be angry if they didn't? Because what do you think is on the horizon? And by the way, speaking of the horizon, there's still an opportunity to do something. You maintain flexibility with a couple of expiring contracts. I just have to understand what's not to like. What's not to like unless you're too scared to like it. Or everybody wants to call me after the Colts season schleprock. That's the attitude that I see right here. What are you waiting on? What exactly are we waiting on here? And how long have we waited? Hey, I will give it up to Kevin Pritchett and Chad Buchanan for giving us a little bit of something right now while still eyeballing and maintaining a focus on the future. Well done. Hey, sometimes it can happen right now. I wish the Colts would have happened right now. Consider where the Colts would have been had they executed a fourth down play. Or, I don't know, been able to defend in the least a quarterback and a wide receiver. Think about where they could have been. Aren't you sick of thinking about where they could have been? Well, this could have happened. It's from Chris. I think fans of the city want dinner, cake, ice cream, and whipped cream, cherries, and give up a stick of gum. It's getting old. Stop being afraid of trades. I can't do this to you. I can't sit here and say I'm ready to win right now. The clock is ticking, and then crap on everything that comes across the table here. Can't do it. All right, 239-1070 is that number. Pascal Siakam to the Pacers again. Bruce Brown, Jordan Nwora, 3 first-rounders. And see, here's what's weird. You guys are all the first-rounders. I'm sorry, that's a losing mentality. What about the first-rounders? What about the draft capital? This is why you get that draft capital, so you can do something right now. You tell me what was better on the horizon. What was a better option out there? It's Michael at 239-1070 right now. Michael, welcome to the show. What's up?
Hey, JMV. I just wanted to call in and say that I share your sentiment. You know, trading first-round picks is obviously hard, but that's how winners win. You know, you have to make these trades. You have to make these moves, and that's how you win in tournament-style fashion later on down the road. So that's all I wanted to call in and say. I just wanted to say I support you, Love the show.
Thank you, brother. I appreciate that. Thank you. I do appreciate that. Go ahead and hit that. I don't know what happened to my you see that over there? Did I just hit the wrong thing? Huh? Go ahead and drop it.
I did. Hit drop.
I did? Oh,
there it goes.
Weird. See, it used to be just me being able to hit a button, and now I got to jack around with 19 different things here.
Yeah.
What do I yell out about that?
This phone doesn't seem to work sometimes either. The buttons always seem to stick.
People are going to start thinking I'm crotchety around here. All right, Josh is next at 239-1070. Hello, Josh.
Hey, I love the move from a being aggressive standpoint. My one pushback is do you think Pascal will fit in with our style of play?
Well, they run up and down the floor and score a crap load of points. How would you fit in?
Yeah, I guess you're right. Well, I think Halliburton probably could get it. Halliburton could probably get anybody involved.
Oh my goodness, yeah, he can make both of us better. Seriously.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's what you want too. Listen, this is just a step. This is an initial step for me. I wanted this to be the norm. This is what we've been sold on, guys in the future wanting to play with Tyrese Halliburton. This is the early stages of it. I want to see this become the norm. This is why we have all these talks and believe all these beliefs right here. I love it, and I expect it.
Yes, I'm with you. I love the aggressiveness. It really shocked me, honestly, and we didn't really give up much.
Listen, if it were Matherin, I wouldn't be down with Matherin. I would have to be talked into Walker, but, I mean, again, you cannot pass up this deal to me. This is too damn good for you to bypass.
Yeah, I agree. I agree 100% because you get an all-NBA player at the 4 position, a position we have been lacking at for the past few years. Yeah, it's a win. It's a win. It's looking like a win. Sure.
Josh, you keep on keeping on yourself right there. Appreciate your call. Jonah, normally in Arizona, moving back to Indy. You a big fan of this situation?
I am a big fan of it, and at first I wasn't really sure what to think about it, especially when it came to parting with one of our younger guys, like you just said, Matherin or Walker. But you got Jordan Nwora, who barely plays. You got Bruce Brown on a team option that probably wasn't going to be picked up at the end of the year, and 3 first-round picks. To me, 2 of those first-round picks are next draft, and from what I understand, it's a very weak draft.
Right.
And
True.
we already have a ton of second-round picks that I'm sure that they can bundle up in a trade to move up in if they really need to, if there's a guy they want to target. But the Pacers already have a logjam of these young guys under contract.
They're not playing. I mean, you got 2 dudes in the first round this past year that don't get any clock the way that it is.
Yeah, and Halliburton is 23 years old. It's time. Don't wait until it's too late to bring in guys that he can be compatible with, or just guys that know how to score the basketball. And not only the duo there with Halliburton and Siakam, but think of Buddy Hield or Matherin or Neesmith. It's going to elevate their games as well, because if you're playing defense on the opposing team and you see Halliburton and Siakam, where do you start? And then not to mention you got some 3-point shooters on the team that can light you up at any given night. So I really love this trade. And if you can sign Siakam long term, this trade just makes perfect sense.
Yeah, I would have to think. I would agree. Jonah, thank you for the call, man. You call anytime. I would have to think that you feel fairly good about that option. I don't think you go into this, right? You don't do that unless you feel pretty good about it. Here's another aspect, and you may view this as complete crap, and that's okay if you do. But you're also showing your elite level guy, hey, this is what you're going to get with us now that you're going to be with us. You have committed to us long term, so this is what we're going to do. This is how we're going to approach this. You're showing him exactly what I am sure you told him. There's zero wrong with that. And listen, if something were to happen, it's going to be a bummer. But you can't look at it that way. You just look at it by the nuts and the bolts of the deal. Why would you not do it the way that is? With two guys that likely weren't going to be back anyway, with a couple of 24s and what they suggest is a weak draft, and then at 26, I mean, hell, I don't even know what the hell's happening at 26. I would be mad if that deal – well, this is what the Pacers did not want to do. Like, I'd be happy – if Mathurin were a part of it, I'd go, yeah, don't do that. But if I saw where the Pacers had this option and they're the ones that turned it down, I'd be mad then. You should have been too, or you would be too. Most of you are on board with me right now. Fred's at 239-1070. Fred, thanks for the hang. How are you?
What's going on, Jay?
Fred, good to hear from you.
Hey, Jay, man, I love the trade. Man, I'm 63 years old, and I love my Indiana team. I was one of those guys back, had 70 backed all up when the Pacers were real. They haven't been real in a long time, man, and it just warms my heart that we are willing to go out and do a trade like this. I mean, you think back 2-3 years ago, man, we were calling for Buchanan's head. You know, man, you got to trust this guy. You look at the turnaround he's made in his decision-making in these few years, man. You got to have confidence that Siakam is going to sign on the line. But regardless if he don't, man, like I said, I'm 63 years old. I can't wait too much longer, man, for some winning to come to Indiana, man.
Hey, Fred, you and I are both on that escalator of life right now. I'm with you. Right there with you.
Exactly, man. Exactly, man. It makes a ton of difference, man. And he didn't give up, man, the core of what we talking about the timeline.
And nobody, and with all due respect to those guys that play, and I like Bruce Brown, and Jordan Nwora seems like a good dude, but who cares? Exactly.
Who cares? Who cares about them draft picks? Look what we got with them draft picks, man, in the years before, besides Mather and them. We traded the one before Mather. Who cares about them draft picks? Let's do it now, dog. Let's get on board with this and win some games.
You got it. Fred, thank you for the call. Do it again soon. The escalator of life are on right here. Let's get going. Get that going. Kevin Bowen, by the way, Swebo, that's Andy Sweeney. Swebo sent me a text, James, a little bit early when I asked about Kevin and his thoughts. Swebo states he's not thrilled. Wanted them to wait. Was more accepting if they signed a long-term deal. Swebo says, I'm with you. Go win. Late first-round picks, you're getting role guys anyway. Pacers can find them and develop easy. Swebo is in agreement with us. Again, there would have been other options that were reported that I would not have been on board. But this, to me, this slaps you in the face and goes, take me. Have me. Want me. That's exactly what this does. And I'm not – we'll deal with something that happens when we have to deal with something that happens. And, again, I feel that both Kevin Pritchard and Chad Buchanan, this has been a well-thought-out deal. It's not like me and James going, well, yeah, let's make a trade right now and not think about it. I'm assuming that the future has been thought out here. Again, there's nothing wrong with taking a shot at the present while maintaining eye shot of the future. I think far too many times around here with what has transpired with our sports teams, we forget about that. And now's the time to remember. All right, quick break and we shall return. If you're on hold, I'll get to you. Kevin Bowen, top of the hour. Jeff Rabjohns of Pigs. And what went down in Bloomington last night? Just get a team that just came. How do you come out flat against Purdue? Fans, I mentioned this earlier. IU fans wanted a hell of a lot more than that group. Seems like IU fans wanted a lot more. I mean, and there are a lot of IU fans willing to to make excuses about absolutely everything. There's a lot that went down last night on the IU side of things where it's inexcusable. Why would you want to find an excuse for it? We'll talk about that with Jeff coming up in the 5 o'clock hour. Busch tickets to give away. That's Busch, Candlebox, and Jerry Cantrell, August the 4th at the lawn at White River State Park. And Golf Expo tickets too, right, James? All right, coming at you as well. Don't go anywhere. Pascal Siakam to the Pacers. More of your conversation with me next.
While high school sports help students develop
JMV.
Well, you're going to have to say that. You're going to have to speak up because I can't hear you.
93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
Pascal Siakam to the Pacers. Jordan Nwora, Bruce Brown, 3 first-rounders. Wyatt writes this, so he's not leaving. Don't worry about that. The Pacers inherit his bird rights, meaning he qualifies for the Supermax. Pacers 5 years, $247 million. Max, another team can offer 4 years, $170 million. However, I will tell you this, most of what I'm getting regarding that is the belief that he is not going to be worthy in his play of the Supermax that you're talking about here, or of a 5-year max deal to that level that you're talking about. It's not so much that, to me, from some, this is what I gather from people that are getting with me right now. They're not as concerned about him not wanting to return. They're concerned about him not living up to the value of what he's ultimately going to get. That's been at least most of what I have gathered from people that have responded negatively to me. Ron's at 239-1070. Ron, welcome to the show.
JMV, long time, man. Been listening to you since you was in the other place.
Yes, me and Mark Patrick. I was in the so-called little chair back then, yeah.
Hey, just a quickie because I know you got to hit the break and all that. What do you think about that being on the Peacock last night?
I watched it on Peacock last night.
Well, I'm just saying, but what do you think about them doing that on Peacock versus other things, and like the NFL did it, you know?
I just, unfortunately, that's where we're going with all of this. I was kicking and screaming, but I had to watch IU and Purdue, and I got it last week. So, yeah, I mean, I wish I had a better answer for you, Ron. I do, but that's where we're going with everything here. And we're going to have to decide, what is going to be worthy of our attention and what isn't one of these days, because, those that provide it for us are going to make us make that decision. So.
Oh, I understand.
It's on the way, buddy. It is on the way. But I did, and you know what? I watched like 9 episodes of Saved by the Bell afterwards, so that's great.
There you go, man. Well, thanks for your time. Appreciate it.
Ron, you call anytime. Thank you very much. I watched the Peacock last night. I was with the Peacock. Hey, by the way, too, for all of this junk I saw from IU people about Robbie Hummel being a homer, the hell are you talking about? If you tuned in last night and you had no idea who Robbie Hummel was, you would have no idea he played at Purdue. Zero. You know that's just a bunch of IU made up, I'm really upset because my team sucks stuff, right? Could not even tell. You'd give it to IU, give it to Purdue, and he is the best out there at doing what he does right now, mind you. So get off of that crap. Quick break, we'll come back. Kevin Bowen, top of the hour. He was in Bloomington last night. Most importantly, I'm sure has a formed and informed opinion on Pascal Siakam to the Pacers. We'll get back to that. Jeff Rabjohns, bottom of the hour. Busy day. Don't go anywhere. Inside the Lounge via YouTube Live, 93.5, 107.5 The Fan.
Watch parties aren't what they used to be.
JMV.
Excuse me, Robo. Any special message for all the kids watching at home?
Stay out of trouble. 93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
James over there, I'm John. I have a bit of a sports arousal today because we got a team that's doing something in the right now. I mean, doing something in the right now while eyeballing the future, and I'm down with it. Pascal Siakam to the Pacers. Pacers give up Bruce Brown, Jordan Nwora, 3 first-round selections. Got that coming up, obviously. The Jim Irsay TMZ reports. Double back to that with you in a second. And IU-Purdue last night. Josh Schertz, the head coach of Indiana State, on a little bit earlier, too. They're at the top of the Missouri Valley playing really well. Tony East, Dustin Dopirak, all mulling over this deal that was reported by ESPN this afternoon with Pascal Siakam going to the Pacers. And joining us now via the Andy Moore Automotive Group hotline, he's one half of KB and Andy, the morning wake-up call. And as Andy Sweeney, has referenced him already today, privately to me, the wet blanket of the two, Kevin Bowen joins us. Hello, Kevin. How are you? Hello, wet blanket. The wet blanket joins us now. Hello, wet blanket.
God, that's a ringing endorsement. Is that what he's saying behind my back?
The wet blanket. I didn't want that deal. You're talking about timelines and draft capital and what may or may not happen in 2029. You're a wet blanket, according to Swebo.
Boy, I don't know if I would agree with all of that. I might have to have a word with him for 3 hours tomorrow morning. Yeah, I would say a tad bit of skepticism, certainly. And honestly, probably before you get into timeline and, age and injury history, I'd start more with just the exact fit. To me, the biggest question we've harped on for 40 games is defense. I don't know necessarily if a guy that I think his defense has waned a little bit from where it was, whatever, back in their title run or even in recent years, if this all of a sudden, helps you out on that end of the floor, especially when you are giving up, a guy that, I think everybody thought the reason why he was brought here, Bruce Brown, was to help you out defensively. I think seeing the deal in itself, and the fact that they didn't give up really any of the young guys that you really like or intrigued by, or however you want to describe it, Matherin and Nembhard and, even Jarris Walker are way too early to bail on him. Even Buddy Hield from an expiring standpoint, I know he's not young. I think that gives me a little bit more reassurance, but I still just look at it and think certainly offensively he can go get you a bucket and it's done at a really high level. But I don't, if it's OG Anunoby, I think I'm doing jumping jacks. This to me, given age and given, again, not that, dominant wing defender, that's where I don't have the same sort of feeling.
I think, again, it is what they're doing right now that I love. And I also love the fact that they have told, and now they are showing Tyrese Halliburton exactly how they approach this franchise in terms of moving forward and winning and doing the best for him since he decided to, take on that extension and be a part of this for the long term. I just think, Kev, when you look at this deal for face value, if you would have shown me this deal, the 2 players on the team and the 3 picks, and you would have told me that the Pacers turned it down, I'd have been all kinds of pissed. Like, if Matherin was on it, I get it. I wouldn't want to trade Matherin. I would, kicking and screaming, even, consider Walker. But with this deal, giving up what you're giving up for that type of player already established, to me, I don't know how you couldn't do it. I'd be pissed if they didn't.
Yeah, I think, the re-sign of him and giving him that max extension is curious to me. I mean, that is a huge commitment. And obviously, theoretically, you don't make this deal if you don't have some sort of reassurance on it. But, again, 5 years and $250 million to a guy going into his 30s, I mean, that's a big, big commitment for, again, a player that if you look at his injury history, I mean, it's been about 12 to 15 games every year. And post-30, does that all of a sudden rise to, 20-ish games, something around? I think those are all things you just got to be honest with yourself. But certainly the message you send to Halliburton, and I would be stunned if Halliburton didn't have major sign-off on this, you can't ignore it because that's what matters, honestly, in today's NBA, a lot of it, especially in a market like this. So certainly you've told Matherin that you're willing to swing. It's probably just the type of swing where, I just can't sit here and give it whatever, an A+ or, a solid A. I just have a little bit of skepticism around that. I do think, Siakam, again, is an extremely gifted offensive player. And, maybe come playoff time, I should probably pay more attention to that sort of stuff when, all of a sudden the scouting report takes away everything. And it comes down to a lot of individual playmakers. And, Siakam is very unique in how he scores, 20, 25 a game. He does it in kind of almost at times a little bit of a throwback way, and he's very crafty. And, he's not necessarily some whatever high-flying athlete or, going to hit 45% from behind the arc. But, maybe that is something that, again, I should pay more attention to and alleviate some of that off of Halliburton's plate when those moments do arise. So, yeah, I'll be obviously super curious how that plays out when it gets there. And, I think as long as you maintain a playoff team, giving up the draft picks isn't too extreme. All of them have super high protections. I saw Tony East tweet that out earlier. They're all pretty much, or I should say the 2 picks of your own are all top 3 and top 4 protected. So as long as you make the playoffs, that's not too much of a worry at all. But yeah, I think, there are a few more questions to be answered with the deal. And I also look at it and think, is there something else coming in the next few weeks? Because,
and that's the other thing, too. They maintain flexibility if they want to do something else. And like I said, I understand what you're talking about, Supermax and how much you're going to pay him, but I want to see how it works first, and I'm glad that they added to this. I just think this deal with what they gave up, I'm willing to look at it, and then, we'll live in the world down the road, I think, when we get down the road. Does that make sense to you? And the flexibility is a part of that. If you want to look at it in the now, is also very important to me.
Yeah, I think they certainly still have maintained flexibility for the next couple of weeks. I think once you get past this and you hand him the type of max extension that I assume in all likelihood he will get, that certainly limits how big of a swing you can take in the next couple of years. But again, for the next few weeks, I mean, just on paper, frankly, there's just no playing time for Obi Toppin and Jalen Smith. So you would think that one of those would be packaged. Again, do you move Buddy Hield? I know from an offensive standpoint, it's super enticing to probably put Buddy Hield and Pascal Siakam together and give him a shooter that really Toronto, I guess maybe had with Fred VanVleet, but, hasn't had next to Siakam in a while. Scotty Barnes and OG Anunoby, I don't think, it stretched the floor necessarily for that reason there. So I am, very interested to see what the next couple of weeks hold. But I think today's swing is certainly, you and I have had this conversation, John. I look at Halliburton in the 6 years that you have him under contract. You're probably going to get 2 big swings at it, really big. This is a huge swing. This is an all-NBA, type of talent, and obviously, whether you gave up what you gave up for him, but more so type of contract you're about to hand him indicates that as well. So this is the big one. And again, for me, I probably would have been a little bit more of an OG Anunoby guy, certainly based off age and based off skill set. But at the same time, I can totally sit here and acknowledge for a small market team, it does send a very positive message to Tyrese Halliburton. Now, ultimately, winning is going to be, how that message is ultimately received. But in the short term, yeah, I mean, Halliburton certainly has got to be a big fan of it because I would say, there's no way, shape, or form the franchise does something of this magnitude without some sort of, positive reinforcement from their star.
Wojnarowski had said that they wanted both. Anunoby and Siakam just didn't have enough to do them both. And then I will tell you this, I want them to keep Matherin. I like Matherin, maybe not as much as you love Matherin, but I like Matherin a great deal. I didn't want to see him in any part of this. And you saw what the Knicks, had to give up to end up getting Anunoby. So there was no way in the world you were going to get away with Toronto, not giving up a guy like Matherin in that case. So another reason why I'm okay with it.
Yeah, it's really 2 very different looking deals. I mean, if you look at the Knicks, they gave up, I guess in a way, they gave up maybe like their equivalents of Matherin and Nembhard. I don't know. Maybe that's too.
Yeah,
that analogy doesn't make
exactly.
total sense.
Yeah.
And obviously, Toronto wants picks too. If I'm not mistaken, I don't think they have their first rounder for this year, or maybe it, in all likelihood, will not be there. So they certainly wanted to get something here in this year's draft. So, yeah, and, I don't know if it's just agent talk, but, I mean, certainly the agent, has leaked to some various national people that it sounds like, Siakam's very open-minded to wanting to be here, and, of course, the money is the most here. I think in an ideal world, you would get Siakam playing at a very, very high level for the next, 2 to 3 years. And then at some point in that contract, you could kind of pass the torch to Jarris Walker for being, that four-man of the future. And I should say that I think is another positive of the deal, John, that I haven't mentioned.
Well, no, you're trying to talk yourself into it. So you're trying not to be a wet blanket like your partner in the morning says right here.
Yeah, gosh.
Listen to you try to talk yourself into it. You're trying to join us all in the world of fun and not hang out in the doom and gloom of what happens in 2030.
I was about to say soggy blanket, but that sounds just as bad as a freaking wet blanket there. And that honestly sounds worse now that I think about it there.
You guys going to fight in the morning? I just hope I've inspired some sort of fight in the morning. Have I done that?
I think you have. I need to jot this down to make sure that that I remember it in the morning. I mean, you and I have talked about this for years, John. I mean, what's the four position look like? What's the power forward look like? That's been, a problem. I don't know, unless I'm forgetting. I guess maybe Thad Young, put a little bit of a Band-Aid on it, but you've been thinking about that probably since David West, really. So that is another element to you. But, again, defense remains are we ignoring the biggest question? And have you almost embraced just like, hey, it's going to be get to 140, get to 150. Like, that's kind of the goal. I don't think you can ignore the age and the injury questions. I mean, if you look at Siakam's career, for the most part, over the past 4 to 5 years, it's been a pretty routine. He's missing 12 to 15 games. And, again, now that he's into that age 30 coming up, does that grow any? And certainly you and I have had many jokes.
Yeah, and I can't. When you talk about missed games, I don't even want to get into that because, like, Halliburton misses a crap ton of games so far. I don't even want to think about that. And I know we're talking about two different players here, but when you get into that, I guess I'm glad they did it in the moment, and I'm trying to do it without thinking about how many games these dudes are going to miss because ultimately most of them end up missing a lot of games. And it's about trying to survive during that time like they're doing right now.
Sure, but I think ignoring injury history is just kind of a naive way to completely look at it. I mean, the reason why Buddy Hield is so coveted is because the dude doesn't miss games. The reason why Malcolm Brogdon is on his umpteenth team for the last handful of years is because he misses a ton of games. So, sure, at times, is it injury luck? Is it injury, can it be a bit of a flip of a coin? Yeah, but again, that is a big part of it. And again, I think that's why Buddy Hield is so darn attractive and why he ranks right up there with the Steph Currys of the world and some of these three-point numbers, because he's able to be out there every single night. And, again, a guy like Brogdon, those two just seem to be fresh in my mind. That's why he has been so expendable to all of these teams. And, again, the last point to me, and you and I have poked fun at this, and, certainly it's half serious, half not, of the whole draft pick element to it. I mean, the reason you can pull off a trade like this is because you did accumulate draft picks and you did put yourself in a position to make a move. And I look at it like, again, more of an Anunoby type, whether that's age, whether that's defense first. That, to me, has me jumping up and down. This type of move, I get it. I understand it. I think there are some reasons to have some optimism, but, I'm not, whatever, parade around Georgia Street tomorrow.
I guess the reason why I brought up Halliburton is if you're going to make up an argument regarding Siakam, which is correct, you can make up the same argument regarding Halliburton. He's missed a lot of time, and I'm just telling you, sometimes in this, Kev, I guess I've been around the block too much. You can't be afraid of everything here. I'm not suggesting you are at all. I know that you're also outlining a lot of the good aspects of it. But I just don't think you can. I'm sick of teams around here being afraid of crap, and I'm okay if they go for it. If it ends up crapping out, then it ends up crapping out, and I'll have to eat a bunch, and you and Swebo can come at me, and I'll deserve it. But I'm not going to sit here and just be doom and gloom that a team like the Pacers are finally doing something that I'm happy and they're doing, or something like we've talked about the Colts trying to, get up off their rear end and having Chris Ballard think about a different way to go about it and a different philosophy. I'm entertained by this. I really am. And I don't know what it holds in the future, but at least for the right now, I'm happy that they got up and they did something with what you just talked about. The draft capital that they have built. You've done something with that while also having the flexibility to still maybe do something a little bit more. And now you're going to see how this all fits together. So I kind of refuse to go, I guess, doom and gloom angle on the injury aspect of it.
Yeah, and I don't know, maybe I'm being total doom and gloom. I hope I'm not coming off as total doom and gloom with it. I'm trying to point out just some areas that I don't, if you're going to make me give a letter grade, again, it's not like an A+ in my mind for this sort of deal. I'm very much team swing. I mean, I've been saying it for years with the Colts for that example. It's time to take a swing at quarterback. It's a disservice to your franchise when you refuse to commit to that. And finally, they did take that swing. And for the Pacers' sake, yeah, I am a fan of taking a swing. I mean, I just said it to you. Anunoby, to me, is the guy that, I've certainly been a fan of. I mean, you and I had a conversation even a little bit earlier. I get that there's reasons why people were against it. Age probably being the biggest one. But again, from a defensive standpoint, I was willing to listen to a Drew Holiday conversation. And again, I get that there are a lot of people that were against that, and there's probably some good reason for that. But for me, I also thought we kind of got into this corner. I think it happens every year around the trade deadline, John, that we get so focused on one player, we act like that's the only guy that could be available in the next, few weeks, few months, however you want to look at it. I mean, if you think back to Halliburton being traded to the Pacers a couple of years ago, there were so many reports leading into that trade deadline that, the Kings are building around De'Aaron Fox and Tyrese Halliburton. Then all of a sudden, boom, this happens, that happens, Halliburton's available, and really the shape of this franchise, frankly, has largely changed forever, really, with Halliburton now coming here. And I thought his Team USA experience was not something to overlook at all. I thought he made, and, Carlisle said it to us late in his interview this morning, there are a lot of great players in the NBA that want to play for Tyrese Halliburton. And I think for the next couple of years, a move like this probably takes you out of those sweepstakes. With I don't know, maybe they can finagle a way to, find another one of those guys onto the roster, but it's going to be difficult. And I thought to myself, man, if you can just be patient here and whatever, again, maybe another name appears by the trade deadline in a few weeks, or if not, maybe you get to the off season, and again, another one of those types of names starts to appear. I.e., maybe even from the Team USA experience where Halliburton had a direct impact with so many of those guys in a positive manner, does that better fit Halliburton's age, where the real needs are on your basketball team? That's kind of where it almost seemed like we got to a point with Siakam where it was like, this is it. And we all were going to be really fed up and really mad if it didn't happen. But I just think there can be players like this, not every day by any means, but there can be players like this that appear when a lot of teams realize, oh, boy, we've got to start over. And clearly Toronto wasn't necessarily there 12 months ago. 12 months later, they've traded away, two of their marquee best players.
So Kevin Bowen, the morning show, KB and Andy, the morning wake-up call. As Andy Sweeney has said, the wet blanket joins me on the Andy Moore Automotive Group hotline. I will say this. I like this deal, and I'm enthusiastic about it, certainly, because of the components of it in the now. And when you brought up Halliburton in that trade of years ago that brought him from Sacramento to here, I would fair a guess that nobody even thought about what type of player he was going to be at the time, right? We agree with that? Do you have any idea what he was going to be? And this is an odd argument because we're talking about two different age demographics altogether with players. But I also like it because you do know, especially from a scoring side, what you're getting with this guy and what addition he is going to be, the threat he is going to be to a team that needs something like that. I understand what you wanted out of Anunoby defensively, and that's great. But when you look at Siakam, he's like 8 more points a game than Anunoby, and that can also help this team. I know they need to be better defensively. I just don't know ultimately how much better with Anunoby. I don't know how much better with Maurice Lucas or Gary Payton they're going to be defensively. But I do know if you add some scoring ability, that can also help And we have seen this defense getting better in the last, 3-4 weeks, month, what have you. So I think the more and more I look at, as you mentioned, the swing that they took, the more and more I like it for the now of face value, because you never really know. We didn't know when they made that deal for Halliburton, but we do now.
Yeah, I'll go back to something I think Tony East said. It might have been with you, John, but maybe it was us in the morning, where last year, if you look at round one in the playoffs, I think of the 8 teams obviously advanced out of round one. 7 of the 8 were top half in defense, and the one was Golden State. And obviously, historically, it kind of speaks for themselves what they've done offensively. So I think at some point, just that end of the floor has got to be of more focus. I mean, hell, wasn't that a big reason why you thought $20 million for Bruce Brown was worth it? And I think that is the calling card at some point when you get into the postseason. Now, I watched that Boston game, and specifically, the night that Halliburton got hurt, and there were moments in that game where literally Drew Holiday just had his back turned to the rest of the action, just so focused on Halliburton, and it was almost like a 4-on-4 game at time. And now it's okay, if you do have a Siakam, there is part of me that's well, that helps you better equip and handle, an opposing team saying, all right, we are going to do everything we can to take away Tyrese Halliburton because we just don't think they have a Robin. And, certainly there's plenty of reason to think Siakam can be that. I just think come playoff time, it's a little bit more on that defensive end. And certainly in the East, when you look atop the conference, I don't need to tell you who those wings are. And, it's a huge reason probably why Miami got on the run last year with what Jimmy Butler was able to do. So you can certainly look at it both sides. You can look at it as you have, Tyrese has his Robin for the next X amount of years, and that's what you need. You need another sidekick. Or you could also look at it and say, defensively, does this continue to put you near the basement of the NBA? And again, if you go off last year, defense was a huge, huge reason why those teams advanced in the playoffs.
Is it your estimation here that can Siakam just not guard a chair? Because that's how you're describing him. Can he not guard his own shadow? Is he that bad defensively now?
No, I don't think he's that bad at all. I think you're trading away arguably your best perimeter defender, and I don't think all.
Well, let's face it, we didn't. I mean, how often did you see that? How often did you see it?
I thought Bruce Brown, certainly when you asked him to guard Tatum, things like that, struggled. But I thought he did a great job on Damian Lillard in those various matchups. Again, from a height standpoint, it's probably a little bit more on that Lillard front. But that's where, again, I have that question of we've talked about defense for 40 games. We've talked about how the scheme isn't working. You're trying all these different things, and now all of a sudden it gets kind of thrown out the window with this move. And I'm like, wait, are we just now not going to act like that was an issue for this team? And, I don't know. Maybe there's been a resurgence in the last month. I mean, Rick Carlisle said to us a big part of the last month that he thought he kind of spearheaded it was Bruce Brown getting back and getting healthy. So, again, it's like, are we all of a sudden just going to push all of that to the side? To me, that'd be, again, a little bit naive to do it. I don't think Siakam is, a Buddy Hield type of defender, Halliburton type of defender. I don't think that at all. But I do think his defense has not been, where it was back, in their championship type of runs. And if it continues to wane, again, how much does that end of the floor become a question mark when you're facing the Giannis's, Tatum's, Browns, et cetera?
Let me tell you this. It's going to be a question mark, whomever's out there trying to guard those dudes you're talking about. Let's just face it. It just is. I don't – I can't tell you because I have not analyzed his defense, but I'd like to think that he could be a little bit more competent than that, I guess, than what is described. But, yeah, again, Kevin Bowen joins us on the Andy Moore Automotive Group hotline as BT Dew and Swebo described him as the moist blanket. You're now the moist blanket. You're moist.
Again, soggy, moist, or wet. I'm not sure if I want to be any of the above.
I'm glad we laugh about
the best out of all those.
I'm getting them right here because people like what we're doing with the back and forth here, so it's good. Hey, I did want to get a bit of a laugh before we got into this final thing. I'm not going to bring up IU and Purdue with you, even though you were sitting in Ellettsville last night for that game. It looked like you had a hell of a view for bad IU basketball and really good Purdue basketball. But TMZ had that report regarding Jim Irsay, and and you and I a little bit had this conversation, and people have asked me, and I know you guys commented on it this morning. I was incredibly worried about his condition right now with the severe upper respiratory situation, but just everything that's going on with Jim Irsay right now, I am as worried as I absolutely can be about everything right now. And I'm assuming this is some common ground in this conversation we can find.
Yeah, I would agree wholeheartedly. Certainly, Carly and Casey and Kaylin and the daughters and everybody over there. I mean, anytime, a human has dealt with the type of, medical issues, scares, however you want to describe it, that he has in his life, and now is going through this, that, I mean, without question. I mean, 64 years old. I mean, I know, you can look at that and it's very, very young, but at the same time, I mean, I look at some of my friends and their parents are around that age, and unfortunately they're no longer here for whatever health reason. And again, I look at them and think that they probably haven't been through everything that Jim Irsay has been through medically in his life. I think the analogy kind of makes sense, John, but I said it this morning, and Jim Irsay about as well as anybody in this market. Imagine what it would take for Jim Irsay to miss the biggest game inside of Lucas Oil Stadium in 9 years. Like when you think about him not being there last Saturday against the Texans and everything that whatever that organization, could do or is willing to do, or, certainly all the help to get him there and do it in a very incognito manner, or, wheel him in some sort of hospital bed, as crazy as that sounds, to get him there. That obviously means that something, very serious is going on. And, for the Colts statement to say severe respiratory illness, we've seen a lot of PR statements over the years. Severe respiratory illness, especially in the winter months, it's nothing, I think, to kind of turn your head at and act like whatever. He'll be fine tomorrow. And I guess there's part of the press release that was like, well, he's, not going to perform Thursday at the concert. I'm like, well, this isn't like John Mayer losing his voice. This is a big deal. So, yes, I certainly am right there with you on that end. And, again, the entire family and the Colts family as well, thinking about them and certainly hope Jim can make as speedy of recovery as possible, even though, I think there's plenty of signs to look at and think this is going to be a long recovery.
Yeah. Well, you think because of this, will we hear or will they hear in this case from the NFL about this, you think? Or because I know the Colts just kind of re-released what they had said most recently about what Jim is going through, but will the NFL, you think, address what TMZ came out with report-wise further down the road?
Honestly, the NFL part I am curious about is, like, if there is link and, owners' meetings, I guess the big one is late March. Do you get a statement from the league that, like, okay, Carly Irsay is it's not the right term, but is in charge of Colts matters, or is whatever, she's the voter for the Colts in those, league meetings. If I'm not mistaken, I think when, he was suspended back in 2014, I think the league came out with that for her. I think it was spring meetings back then, or maybe it was winter meetings. I kind of forget, but that to me is a little bit more of, I would think the Colts can handle it how they would like. I think the league would give the team the right to do that. But when we get to those league meetings in late March, if this is still an issue, then that is kind of what I am curious about.
So, Kevin Bowen, the morning wake-up call may be a little spicy because of what Swebo, the wet blanket that is now the moist blanket, Kevin Bowen, on the Andy Moore Automotive Group hotline. Make everybody's morning. All right, bring that moistness with you about this
Kevin
trade.
Moist Blanket Bowen. Don't know if that's what I want. Maybe I should change my opinion now in hearing how you.
No, you don't do that. Don't do that. Don't do that. No, go with. I don't want to. That's not my intention whatsoever. But a spirited conversation it was, man. I appreciate that very much, and especially going back and forth on a situation that we've unfortunately heard about and been through before regarding Jim Irsay and hoping for the best with him and all involved, man. It's tough. It really is.
It is, yeah. Best to Jim, best to his family and the Colts family as well. Yep. And as always, John, enjoyed the combo.
Thank you, buddy. We'll be listening in the morning. Appreciate you.
All right, see you.
That's the moist blanket right there. Kevin Bowen, Sweebo, and the moist blanket. The morning wake-up call tomorrow morning, 7 until 10 a.m. on The Fan. More on the Siakam deal, your calls, and Jeff Rabjohns of Pigs from Bloomington about last night coming up, too. Don't go anywhere.
Who says dry January has to be...
The Ride with JMV.
Give me my theme music!
93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
All right, number 9 at 239-1070. Bush, Candlebox, Jay Cantrell. It's like we're going to step right back into the 90s on August the 4th on the lawn at White River State Park. Number 9 at 239-1070 is going to go on us. Thank you to my friends at Live Nation, as always. Awesome folks. Got Janet Jackson for you next week, too. Janet Jackson and Nelly. Hey, tomorrow's show, NBA Jam, Mick Ultra, me, and Twin Peaks. For your chance to win stuff, I'll explain, but this is the best combo in the history of this show being at Twin Peaks. Tell you about that in just a second. Meantime, Andy Moore, Automotive Group Hotline, Pigs.com. Friend of the show, Jeff Rabjohns, regarding a wrap on last night. Hello, Jeff. How are you?
Fantastic. How are you doing, bud?
I want to thank you for the flexibility because we've kind of jacked you around a little bit here recently because of breaking news and such, and thanks for being cool with it.
Oh, of course, man. Hey, life requires in-game adjustments sometimes too, man. Never worry.
Well, speaking of which, let's start right there. I want to start with, you've got the biggest game at home on the schedule against your rival. The slow start and really the lack of enthusiasm. Where do we start with that level of concern that we saw on the IU side of things last night?
I mean, I didn't think the first few minutes were that terrible. McKenzie.
Overall, first half, I guess, is what I'm talking about too. With you kind of being, it looked like they went through spurts where they were really flat to me. Not at the beginning, and you're right about that.
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing was, Mike Woodson went to the auto bench with 2 fouls. Mbako goes out there, gets 7 points in the first 5 minutes, gets his second foul, gets benched for most of the rest of the first half. How many fouls does he end up with? 2. So that decision is almost like fouling out your own player by choice for much of the first half. A little bit similar with Chloe Ware. He didn't really have it going, but he was at least going to give you some chance. And, he got auto-benched for an extended stretch in the first half with 2 fouls. How many fouls did he end up with? 3. So I think a little bit of that was, the auto-benching, which the analytics have shown for, 10, 15 years now, is just not a good idea, because a lot of times players don't even get to their 4th foul. So playing them makes more sense. So I think that was a little bit of it. Let's give Purdue some credit here. This is a fantastic team that Purdue has. I know IU fans are going to yell at me for saying that. It's true. Okay. Fletcher Lawyer, Braden Smith, better than they were last year. I know Braden had a bad game last night. I think it's 0 for 6 from 3. But overall, his play has been better. They brought in a transfer who has fit in very well to what they do and how they do it. Zach Edey playing like a National Player of the Year. Trey Kaufman-Wren, Caleb First, a little hot and cold, but usually they get good production from at least one of them. Purdue is really, really good. But from the Indiana standpoint, when you're playing a rival at home, you shouldn't have the lulls that you had. And I think putting Mbako and Ware on the bench for an extended stretch in the first half was a big piece of that, because that was when Purdue went from, having a lead, clearly playing better basketball, to all of a sudden up 20. That game was decided in the first half. It was over, okay? IU made a nice little run there, 17-7, start the second half, got close. Yeah. But that game was decided in the first half.
So, Jeff Rabjohns at Pigs.com. So you bring up this point, and I want to play off of it. I remember going back to year number 1 when you were asked people in and around the program, so what's Mike Woodson really have to learn? What's some of his biggest issues? And they all suggested it's still that NBA coaching type of attitude and philosophy that he's gained in so many years in coaching at whatever level in the NBA. And you bring up his philosophy, which is long-standing been the NBA philosophy. 2 fouls and your bench, no matter the circumstances. Why has he not seen those analytics that you speak of? Why has he not changed that philosophy, especially with this group where you know that you cannot withstand a blitz like Purdue put on you at the end of that half, and in large part that was due to your 2 main guys on the bench with 2 fouls?
Yeah, I mean, that's a key question sitting here in January of 2024. And to be fair, though, he kind of didn't do it against Kansas. He really rode his horses for longer stretches against Kansas, and that was IU's best performance against an elite team. Now, IU led in the second half, only lost 75-71. I understand they lost, but they played a lot of good basketball in that game. So it's going to be interesting moving forward. Does Woodson make that adjustment? Because I think it's one that clearly would help IU. You look at the roster, and this is a team that the starters are clearly better than the bench players. And you can see that if you want to go to the analytics and be nerdy like I am, great. You can also just watch the team play and say, okay, they're better with Ware, Renault, Mbako, and then the main guys on the floor. They're just better. So with this particular roster construction, it just makes more sense to have your lead guys out there much more. And I think one of the things is, like, in the NBA, they do have to manage minutes. It's an 82-game season. In college, 30-some regular season games. NBA, a number of guys are 30 years old and older. You got to manage their minutes. Even some of the guys around 28 or so. You don't want to burn them out at the end of seasons. In college, you mainly have guys who are 18 to 22. You're playing twice a week. So it's just a different situation as far as age of players, length of schedule, number of times you play per week. And I think that's one of the things that we've seen with some NBA guys who come into college. They would even talk about, well, I got to manage minutes. Well, do you? I mean, look at what Bill Self's doing with his Kansas roster. Their starters this year, significantly better than the bench most of the time. Got a couple guys who are playing well here and there. But for the most part, there have been games where he's had 3 or more starters play 35 minutes or more. He's had a number of games where he's had starters play 38 minutes or more. So I think in college, there are times if you don't have a bench to where a bench can really help you, then sometimes you just have to ride your horses.
Here's a Jeff Rabjohns of Peaks.com. IU a loser last night at home to Purdue. He's talking about that and more here on the Andy Moore Automotive Group Hotline. I was curious about this when I found out you were coming on. Where they are right now, considering wins and losses, how far are they off with what you thought at the start of the season? Or is it in the neighborhood of what you thought?
It's in the neighborhood. I didn't think they would lose to Nebraska. I didn't think they would lose to Rutgers. I did not think they would beat Connecticut, Auburn, or Kansas, or Purdue. Those 4 programs are clearly on a different level than IU is right now. But I thought IU, would be able to, get enough out of the front court, have enough backcourt play. And I really thought with the length that they have, I thought they might use some defensive pressure. You're going to run and jump guys, do a little half-court trap, maybe a little token one step over half court to kind of like make people feel pressure as they get the ball up the court, slow them down, make them do some work to get into their offense. Then maybe they've only got 15 seconds on the clock when they really start trying to get into a set instead of 20 or 22. I thought they'd be able to speed people up a little more. But the big thing for Indiana, though, is they are where they are. So they got to figure out a way to get some wins. And, the Big Ten's not great this year. So it's not like a bad Big Ten record is going to be, real palatable to the selection committee come Selection Sunday. But I think Indiana's really got to find a way to not only get some wins, but I think it's probably, unless they go on a big-time run, I think they need to get a marquee win or two. I mean, they have no quad 1 wins right now. They got a chance for several. But they're certainly going to need to get some quality wins. They're going to need to get wins, just wins, first of all. You got to have enough wins. But I think they're going to need to get some quality wins too. Or, right now the analytics project IU to finish 8-12 in the Big Ten. That's not even going to get you in the conversation for the NCAA tournament. So they have a lot of work to do here over the last 2 months of the season. A lot of work.
Jeff, certainly I've heard a lot from fans, from former players regarding Mike Woodson, where he is right now, coaching this team. What was expected, where he is, how is he doing? I'll ask you, following the program as much as you do, where is he, not only with this group, but where you thought he was going to be when he was first hired with this program right now? How is he as the coach to this point, according to what you thought it was going to be with him?
Sure. I'll start by saying this. I always let seasons and coaching tenures play out. We've seen plenty of seasons where people have struggled, and then they've made some adjustments, put it together, and done well. So we're sitting here January 17th. So I'll let the season play out, and we'll let, a coaching tenure play out. But it's fair to look at comparable examples. And, what has happened to date? It is very fair to look at observable results. Mike Woodson's in year 3. Indiana is ranked 88th in Bart Torvik, 88th. Marquette, year 3 under Shaka Smart, top 15 Bart Torvik. Cincinnati, year 3 under Wes, top 40 Bart Torvik. And they just beat 2 national top 25 teams, including a top 15 team. And in some of their other games, they've been competitive. Lost by 3 to number 14 Baylor. Lost by 1 to number 25 Texas. So it is very fair to look at, okay, who are some people in year 3? What are they doing? So I think, Indiana certainly is not where it had hoped to be in year 3. And, to anticipate your follow-up question, why? The number of reasons. I think one of them is they didn't hit enough in recruiting or in the transfer portal on guards and wings. They need more guys who can make shots, who can create on the perimeter, who can handle the ball versus pressure, who can get defenders off balance, create passes, and create scoring opportunities. If, let's say you took Peyton Sparks, and nothing against Peyton Sparks, great kid. We're talking positions here, positions. If you took a backup center and made that a shooting guard or a wing, that helps IU. They got an open scholarship. So if they fill that with a guard or a wing for the transfer portal, now you're talking 2 more guards or wings. That changes IU's team. So I think one of the biggest things that happened to why is IU where it is right now, the roster's a little too front court heavy, and it does not have nearly enough guards and wings who are shot makers, shot creators, or who can get defenders off balance and attack off the dribble. I think that is the number one thing this offseason that Mike Woodson has to change. I think that's the biggest thing. You got to kind of flip the roster, more guards and wings. You want to be good on the front court, but we've seen plenty of teams over the years in college basketball who have had good front courts, bad back courts. They don't win a lot of games. They don't do anything in the NCAA tournament. So I think getting more guards and wings who can create shots, create for others, attack off the dribble. They can be slashers. They can be shooters. You can get some of each. But Indiana has to improve its guards and wings over the offseason.
Hey, Jeff, in closing here, has Mike Woodson and his staff a false sense of trust in Xavier Johnson? Have we seen that?
Maybe. It's one of those things where, Xavier and, he's had some good moments here and there. He really has, but obviously his behavior at the Rutgers game, clearly a problem. Getting another flagrant shortly after getting a flagrant 2 and getting tossed, clearly a problem. Your point guard, your normal starting point guard, I realize Gabe Cupps has started for him, at times, but he's your normal starting point guard. For him to go scoreless against your rival, that's clearly a problem. So they need to get him back into a good space, mentally, and good space emotionally, because he's really the only perimeter player that IU has who really can turn the corner in the ball screen, who can really get downhill. The way he played with Trace Jackson Davis, Trace's junior year, kind of the run they made at the end of the year, the games they won in the NCAA tournament. That's the Xavier Johnson that Indiana really, really needs down the stretch. I don't know if that's going to be enough, but that certainly would give them a better opportunity here down the stretch. But that's a big key for this final, 2 months, 2.5 months, whatever is going to be left for Indiana for this season this year.
Again, I'm sorry for messing around with you and moving you around for the past couple of days. My bad on that end. But we'll catch up on a day that's not so robust with breaking news too. And
that's good news for the Pacers. That's big. I like that trade.
Good.
Like
See, you're not a wet blanket like Kevin Bowen is on this show. So well done.
I like the move. It's a very aggressive move. There is some calculated risk, but you're going out there and getting somebody who can play, who I really think pairs well with Halliburton. He's your stud that you build around, but you got to have some other studs. One stud don't get it done, not in the NBA. So I like the move, and I like the fact that Pacers are trying to be as aggressive as you can for the dollars that you have in a mid-major market.
No wet blanket, no moist blanket right here. Thank you. Jeff Rabjohns of Peaks.com, man. Thanks again for adjusting the time.
Always good talking to you. Hope to see you soon, my friend.
It's Jeff Rabjohns at Pigs.com. Quick break. We'll come back. Greg Rakestraw is hosting a brand new show here on the Fan, top of the hour. We'll get to that. Got some Golf Expo tickets to give away. Maybe sneak in some calls at 239-1070. A significant day for the Pacers getting Pascal Siakam. We'll recapture that for a final time next.
In order for small businesses to thrive, they need to be...
Listen here, he's not the Messiah, he's a very naughty boy. Now go away!
93.5 and 107.5, The Fan.
A big show today, and again, Pacers getting Pascal Siakam, Jordan Nwora. You get, you throw a couple of first round, check out 3 first rounders in there. Bruce Brown as well. And there's your deal. That was a can't-miss deal. We talked about that. If you missed a lot, Tony East, Dustin Dopirak talked about that. Josh Schertz, the head coach at Indiana State, was with us. Kevin Bowen. Make sure you get in on the morning wake-up call with the wet blanket coming up tomorrow morning, and Swebo beginning at 7 a.m. And Jeff Rabjohns at Peaks.com with us. Tomorrow, by the way, the Michelob Ultra All-Star Challenge live at Twin Peaks in Castleton. Anybody can play NBA Jam, which is awesome. Get their highest score. The person with the highest score gets custom Mick Ultra tennis shoes and an invitation to the finals on February the 15th at Brothers Downtown. So if you're good at NBA Jam, join me tomorrow at Twin Peaks and see if you can win that. Maybe you could take home 2 Ultra Courtside Concert VIP tickets for you, too. Big day tomorrow, Twin Peaks in Castleton. NBA Jam and Mick Ultra. I'm serious. This is a can't-miss opportunity for you. If you love NBA Jam, going to be there. High score wins. Greg Rakestraw's in studio. What you got coming up here, buddy?
So I have a new program called On the Horizon. It is 60 minutes dedicated to the Horizon League men's and women's basketball championships, which are being played for a 5th time at the Indiana Farmers Coliseum on March 11th and 12th. So lots of good mid-major basketball conversation between now and 7 o'clock.
Well done, buddy. Good to
Thank
see you,
you.
too. Congratulations again on the award.
Much appreciated. Thank you.
Sportscaster of the Year, Greg Rakestraw's got you coming up next here. James, great job out of you. Golf Expo tickets, number 9 at 239-1070 right now. Golf Expo tickets at the Indiana State Fairgrounds. Get those, number 9 at 239-1070. I'll have plenty more on Pascal Siakam tomorrow. We're all going to play NBA Jam, and you could win lots of prizes. Lots of prizes tomorrow with Mick Ultra and NBA Jam. We're going to be live at Twin Peaks in Castleton. Show begins at 3. I'll see you there. 93.5, 107.5 The Fan.